across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning. It is 2 minutes past 6 on a Saturday morning. Your weekend starts here. It is Talk Breakfast. I'm Mark Dolan. A massive 4 hours for you. And we bring you the breaking news that Donald Trump, the leader of the free world, has confirmed he's going to sue the BBC, our national state broadcaster, for up to $5 billion. You heard me right, $5 billion. After its Panorama programme doctored one of his speeches. Speaking to the Telegraph newspaper on board Air Force One, a furious Donald Trump said he would formally seek damages against the BBC as early as next week for between $1 billion and $5 billion. He said, "I think I have to." The US president added that Sir Keir Starmer was very embarrassed. Well, I don't know about you, I'm embarrassed too. And that is the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch at 8 a.m. Why is it that we are getting leadership about our energy policy, about our open borders, and about our culture, and about our BBC, not from the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, but from a foreign leader, from the leader of the free world, Donald Trump? Do you support Donald Trump's attempt now to sue the BBC for up to $5 billion? Let me have your reaction. 0344 499 1000. So a big show today, but that is the lead story. If you're joining us, you will wake up to the news that Donald Trump is digging in, very unhappy with the BBC's non-apology for the Panorama programme. And of course, that apology came before it was revealed by The Telegraph that a second flagship show, Newsnight, also doctored material from that speech at the Capitol in 2021. And it was a scandal then, it's a scandal now. It's a diplomatic incident. And Trump is going to sue the BBC for up to $5 billion. We're going to get reaction from across the political spectrum. But with me in the studio right now, former Met Police Detective Peter Blexley. Peter, good to have you in the studio.
Good morning, Mr. Dolan. Thank you for having me.
Donald Trump doesn't take any prisoners, does he?
I love the unpredictability of the man. I think it's one of his strengths, actually, that you never know what he's going to say or do next. It must be, imagine being a member of his staff thinking, what's the governor going to do today?
Well, that's right. But although he's unpredictable, what he winds up doing is normally the right thing. So he has reduced taxes, which is generating growth in the American economy. He has closed the southern border, where previously 12 million people entered America illegally over 4 years. He's cancelled net zero so that America can have cheap energy and massive manufacturing. He's had an American first policy when it comes to industry. So he's done all of these things, and now he's having to sort us out as well. And landing in Scotland a few months ago saying, you've got to tackle mass immigration, you're not going to have a Britain anymore. Why have you got these windmills there, useless? Why aren't you drilling in the North Sea? And now he's saying, why do you pay for the BBC, which is a leftist propaganda machine?
The doctoring of that speech, which lies at the very essence of his threat to sue the BBC, was such an egregious thing to do that when I first saw it and it was revealed, I think the Telegraph originally broke the story.
Yeah, good journalism.
And when I saw how that clip had been doctored, my gut instinct as a former detective was to think, there must be something illegal here. Of course, the morality of it, or should I say the lack of morality over it, was blatantly obvious. But I was so shocked by it, I was starting to think, what law might cover this? I don't think it is a criminal act of any kind, but it just felt so wrong. It felt that it was
well, that's right.
Criminal.
It shows how in touch you are with our audience, Peter, because I got a text message yesterday saying from someone, this feels criminal to me, haven't they broken the law in some way? Well, they've broken the law of journalism and of integrity by lying to their viewers, not just once but twice. And Donald Trump is now furious about it. And my point, Peter, is this is the tip of the iceberg. The BBC, like so much of the public sector, is in the grip of progressive groupthink. It's ultra woke. And this story has exposed that. And I think that it's a great service from Donald Trump to sue the BBC, because what it will do is force them to self-reflect on the kind of output that they are serving up on a daily basis. And they're going to have to change, because if the BBC doesn't change, it will die.
Oh, undoubtedly. I've listened to some very learned legal voices in the last few days who say that this road to suing them will be a bumpy one. There may be certain things that he's got to prove. Namely, was Panorama viewed in America? Well, of course, in this day and age, with the wonders of the internet, somebody will undoubtedly have seen it in America.
Definitely,
of
and it may have been clipped and gone on TikTok and social media.
Of course, so undoubtedly people will have seen it. But if we boil down to who did what, and of course we don't have the names of the BBC employee who actually spliced those two
who
clips
looks
together,
to have walked away scot-free.
Well, that's my fear. And of course, will that lone employee have done that entirely off their own bat without speaking to anybody else? Or is, of course, as I strongly suspect, there is a conspiracy here? Whoever spliced it together, were they told to splice it? Did they do it themselves? Was it their own initiative? Did they tell an editor? Did they tell a producer?
Why are you being so,
How
Peter
many
Blexley,
people knew?
why are you being so cautious? It is a conspiracy.
Yeah, but of course
the
I'm a
BBC
detective.
is a propaganda machine.
Yes,
it's not like you to sit on the fence.
I'm not sitting on the
Somebody
fence.
get Peter a coffee. I don't know what's happened to him. He's gone woke. He's gone all careful.
No, listen to me. I'm a
Peter,
former
what is
detective.
this?
I deal
You're going
with
down.
evidence. I deal with evidence.
And I've
so
presented
I pose
you
that
with the
question
evidence.
because I want to know the names of who did what. And thereafter, I want those names in the newspapers. I want them exposed. The people who are guilty of this conspiracy, I want to know the evidence, I want to know the perpetrators, and I want them exposed.
And I hear your
Kindly
point.
retract your comment about me being woke.
That's a four-letter word for Peter Blexley. Listen, I take your point about procedure and about the individuals involved, but my issue is that this is cultural, Peter, because you don't just watch Panorama and Newsnight, you watch EastEnders and you watch Doctor Who and you watch the Peaky Blinders and all of their drama, the woke sort of history reenactments which lie about, you know, the past of this country.
Yes.
It seeps through every aspect of the output of the BBC, and that's why I support this legal action. Now, I'll be honest with you, right? I defer to your legal knowledge and your knowledge of policing, but I doubt that Donald will get his $5 billion. Okay, it's probably unlikely, but I think that's not the story here. I think that's a red herring. I'm not even sure Donald cares about the money. I think he's making a point, and what he's doing is he's going to provoke change within our corporation, within our national state broadcaster, that we're not going to have received from any politician in this country.
But how long will that change take? And will it really happen? If the groupthink runs so deep and is so perverse and is so biased and left-leaning, how is that ever going to be stripped out of an organisation so big that essentially polices itself?
Finally, Peter's got it back. He's got it back. He's got it back. He's not woke anymore. Peter, you are so right. And this is my issue. Well, I'm not actually, and I hear what you're so right about, you know, the people working on Newsnight and Panorama. We should get to the bottom of that. It's actually unfair on Tim Davie and the Deborah Furness of the head of news to have gone, and the person that did the splicing not. So, you know, they're the one with the smoking gun, aren't they? But the issue I've got, though, overall, I'm not too worried about a couple of lads on Panorama. If you were going to get rid of the biased people at the BBC, you would be left with the caretaker and maybe a lady on reception called Jill. That would be it.
Oh, well, there'd be plenty of vacancies, and maybe some people who do have an understanding of the word impartiality could apply it. But I've just had a bit of a thought, Mr. Dolan. I wonder...
It's not another woke thought.
Bearing in mind...
What's happened to Peter today?
Bearing in mind that the BBC is a publicly funded public corporation, and therefore the people who are employed by it are public servants... okay? Do you see where I'm leading to now?
Yeah, this is interesting.
If we get the names, the identity of those who spliced, those who ordered the splicing, those who allowed it to go out on air, would that constitute the criminal offence of misconduct in public office?
Well, that's an extraordinary suggestion, and that would certainly improve the issue of bias in the BBC, because if you're a producer and if you take the view that you're going to misinformation could see you jailed, well, then suddenly you'll have neutral broadcasting again. And here's the point, Peter. It's not complicated. If people say, oh, you know, every journalist's got an opinion and you're putting out that much news, it's going to be biased, and sometimes the left will be happy, sometimes the right will be happy, that's nonsense, because I will take you to any news output on the BBC in the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s, when it was neutral, because I know, because I grew up watching it.
Yeah.
I mean, did you have issues with BBC impartiality in 1975 or 1980?
It was basically the only outlet we had, almost.
And it was quite boring, wasn't it? In a good way. It was just here are the headlines and here's what's going on in the world.
I enjoyed Blue Peter. Right? Get out, Shep. Right? You know, I mean, I did. Exactly, I was a kid there and watched with Mother and all those kind of things.
Of course, yeah. Bill and
that's
Ben.
how old I am. Yeah. I did kind of
Trumpton.
enjoy that stuff. But
did you base your career on the policeman from Trumpton? Was he your hero? Was he your idol?
No, I certainly didn't. My ideas of policing came from a very different place.
Peter Bleksley's gone woke. What is going on? More on Trump's efforts to sue the BBC next. And I'm going to take your calls. Book your place on the show. We've already got calls coming in. Do you support Donald Trump's action against the BBC? He wants to sue the corporation for $5 billion. So let's get reaction to that. More front pages next. Don't go anywhere. It's a busy show.
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out.
Don't need to increase taxes.
I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes.
I will not increase your national insurance. I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax.
We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean.
The economic circumstances have declined, deteriorated since a year ago. We are having to look at taxes and spending.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
If you're just joining us, it is 17 minutes past 6 in the morning, and we have the breaking news that following the BBC's mealy-mouthed non-apology, a furious Donald Trump is now going to sue the BBC for up to $5 billion, which is 5 times the amount that he originally threatened to sue the BBC for. That number, by the way, could increase, because that's in relation to the Panorama video clip in which he was misrepresented from his speech in 2021. That's before it was revealed that a second flagship BBC show, Newsnight, also doctored Trump's speech 2 years previously in a broadcast where a Trump former advisor called out the bad edit live on air. Nothing was done by the corporation, and now Trump is going to take the BBC to the cleaners. What is your reaction? I'm delighted to say my very good friend, former Met Police Detective Peter Blexley, is in the studio reacting to this. He's nearly as angry as Trump, as is Ivor in Hampshire. Good morning, Ivor. Welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Morning, Mark. Yeah, good show.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Now, Ivor, what's your reaction? Some people are worried that the BBC are going to suffer financially if Donald Trump is successful. What do you think?
Good. Hope they do. Serves them right. They should be took to the cleaners. They're a load of rubbish.
Yes, and it's interesting, isn't it, Ivor, that it takes a foreign leader to hold our national state broadcaster to account?
Well, I watched that interview last night with Bev Turner.
Yeah.
And it was brilliant. Everything he said is what this country needs. And this lot here haven't got a clue. We're being run by people like the lunatic asylum.
Well, I can't disagree with you, Ivor, because I'll be mentioning this at 8 a.m. in Dolan's Dispatch, and I do hope you'll give it a listen, because in that interview with Bev Turner, who's a very good friend of mine, a great journalist, he said, isn't she? She's fantastic, and she takes no prisoners. Yeah. And she said, Donald Trump said in that interview, why have you got so many windmills? You've got incredible oil resources in the North Sea. He said, why do you have mass immigration? You're not going to have a Britain anymore. And then he, of course, ranted and raved about the BBC, which Ivor, you and I pay for. That's assuming you pay the licence fee. Do you pay the licence fee?
Yeah, I do. I've got a good mind to cancel after this lot, really.
Yeah. Why? What would motivate you to stop paying, Ivor?
Well, because they're so biased. Everything's one way. I mean, you just look at that question time. It's all a big setup. You get somebody like you get a person like Nigel or somebody on there from the Reform Party.
Yes.
And they're outnumbered, and all the time it's rah, rah, rah when they want to say something. And they're just so unfair.
I completely agree. You've got the presenter interrupt whoever the conservative-leaning guest is. Do you think, Ivor, that the corporation is capable of change?
Well, I think if they want to keep going, they ought to scrap the licence, and then just, if somebody wants to watch it, you pay for it.
Stay with us, Ivor. Peter Blexley, your reaction to what Ivor's had to say.
I love that phrase that Ivor used, serves them right.
There you go.
A good old-fashioned phrase, which I've heard all my life, but I haven't heard for a while. Beautifully delivered by Ivor, and absolutely hits the nail on the head. He's right. It serves them right.
That was the story of your career as a top police officer, which is about accountability, and if you've done a bad thing, you will face your comeuppance, and it serves a number of criminals right. And this is what the BBC needs to do now. It needs a bloody nose, and it needs a complete sea change in its culture. But is it possible?
And talking of which, in support of Donald Trump's efforts to sue the BBC, this afternoon I'm putting you and the audience on notice. I shall go home and report an allegation of crime to the Metropolitan Police. I shall lay out the BBC are publicly funded. BBC employees are therefore public servants. Somebody who deliberately misrepresents a speech by the President of the United States by splicing and editing sections of it together to give a completely false representation has, in my view, conducted misconduct in public office, and I make that allegation of crime, which I would like investigated.
At which point, the police would then have the authority to investigate the corporation, go in, Look at the clips, find the original material, speak to line managers, and find those individuals that you mentioned earlier who were responsible directly for that edit.
I fear, they will go to the Crown Prosecution Service and say, are BBC employees public servants or not? And then perhaps the CPS might bend over backwards to convince themselves that they're not public servants. But we shall see.
Ivor, the reason why I'm enthusiastic about this legal action is because I want the BBC to wake up, to understand it's got to change to survive. But can it, Ivor? Do you have the faith that with the right Director General, with the right Prime Minister eventually one day in this country, with the right board, with the right journalists and broadcasters, the BBC can be great again?
It could be, but like you said, it'd have to be a complete clear out. All the old lot, the lot of them's got to go. And like you said, we've got to have a proper leader. If Nigel don't get in, next time the country's done. Finished.
Really? What makes you say that, Ivor?
Well, where the hell are we going to? I mean, you know, Conservatives, they had 14 years and they didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And the trouble is, they can say now, like Kemi Badenoch can say, oh, if I get in, I'll do this, I'll do that. But most of the Conservatives now are Liberals, are leaning more to the left. So whatever she says she'd do, she'd get voted down on.
Most definitely. And what about concerns about the financial side of the BBC? What would you say to managers who would argue, look, there will be no news programmes, there'll be no Radio 2, there'll be no EastEnders if Donald Trump wins, Ivor?
Well, do away with it altogether then.
You won't be losing too much sleep. Listen, Ivor, brilliant call to kick off the show. Do call me again soon. Really enjoyed your company. 03444991000. How about this from Sharon? Good morning, Sharon. Welcome to Talk Breakfast on a Saturday morning, 24 minutes past 6. People who want to watch the BBC can pay for it. If you don't watch the BBC, then you do not pay for it. That's what needs to happen. Neil says, Mark, how can the BBC change when the people making these programmes never get sacked? Well, that's Peter Blexley's brilliant point. He says it's always the top brass that goes, and that is a problem. We actually need it. It is not just the senior management, is it, Peter? It is the foot soldiers, the editors, the writers, right? The people doing the straps on the screen. It is the foot soldiers who are actually responsible for so much of the BBC's bias.
Let me just equate it, if I may, to another public service in which I have a huge interest, the police. OK? Every officer who goes out there and does their job knows that there will be accountability. Accountability from the public. Accountability from people who pay their council tax. Accountability possibly from lawyers of arrested people, accountability from the Independent Office of Police Conduct, accountability from courts, accountability from misconduct panels. If those kind of things follow, they are heavily scrutinised and held to account, and that, of course, is right. Why is the person who spliced those video clips together not being held to account? That's what I want. Fine if the top brass go, they realise that it's their organisation, they've steered it in the wrong direction, they've not done their job, but I want the guilty parties who worked on the front line, who did that hugely egregious act, I want those held to account. I want them named, photographed, in our papers and on our news screens.
Sharon says, no, Mark, the BBC can never be good again. I hate it. And that's the thing, there is such public anger towards the BBC now, partly because we're forced to pay for it, and partly because we have suffered this bias for years and years and years. I would go back as far as Brexit, 2016, when the BBC just felt like Brexit was a source of shame, even though it was a democratic mandate. And they spent the 4 years from 2016 to 2020, Peter, dealing with Brexit as though it was a problem to be solved, rather than an opportunity to be seized.
Yes, which is indicative of their bias. Of course they adopted that position. And we see it time and time again. Let me give you an example. I'm sitting there watching the news with my son, who's 24 the other day.
Yeah.
And we're watching the BBC News.
Is he as good looking as you are?
Far better looking.
That's not possible.
That's not difficult, is it? Right. But of course, he's got the remote control. Hence, we're watching the BBC News. The news broke of Epping Council losing their High Court case because they wanted to close the Bell Hotel in Epping, where the migrant hotel. BBC put up a news strap, right? And it said, hotel must house asylum seekers. That was their take on the court case ruling.
Wow.
That hotel, the word must is completely and utterly inappropriate. I said to my son, that is a misrepresentation. That hotel, the word must does not apply. Hotel must house. No, hotel can house asylum seekers would be more appropriate, because the owner of that hotel could close it tomorrow, but they won't, because they're probably on a very lucrative government contract. So that misrepresentation, just in one line, for me, gave you a window into their inherent bias.
I tell you something, he's coming in hot this morning is Peter Bleksley, as is Christina. Good morning, Christina. Thank you for watching and listening to the show, depending on, because don't forget we're on the radio, but if you want to watch the programme, head to YouTube and just put the word talk in there, search for that, and up we pop. Christina says, hi Mark, yes, Donald should sue the BBC. We're fed up with the left-wing gaslighting. If the BBC survives subscription-based only, then fair enough. Great show, says Christina. Well, Christina, thank you for that. It's not a great show without you. Thank you for your input. Yes, Donald Trump should sue the BBC, says Amanda. He has every right to do so, and it's high time the BBC is brought to book. So many messages. Sharon in Staffordshire. Good morning, Mark and Peter. I'm so glad that Trump is going to sue the BBC for $5 billion and then some. And the BBC had better not expect the licence fee payers to pay for it. Davey had better take his money out of his pocket to pay for it. Well, this is what's going to have to happen if Donald Trump was successful and to get $500 million, $1 billion or $5 billion, is the BBC will have to do what every other media outlet has been doing for the last 10 to 15 years, which is cutting its cloth accordingly. Zoe Ball, are you familiar with her work?
Some of it.
Right, yeah, and you don't sound too excited, and neither am I. Look, I'm sure she's a nice lady. When she hosted the Radio 2 breakfast show, she was paid £1 million a year to play records and say, isn't it sunny outside? £1 million a year, something that she would never get in the private sector, in the commercial sector. It's wild. So what they can do, this $5 billion can be dealt with, should it happen. Six-figure salaries for senior managers who do nothing, they're pen pushers. You've seen it in the police, right, back in the day before the cops. The idle ne'er-do-wells who do nothing and draw a good salary. And the talent, wildly overpaid. Not Donald Trump, what's his face, Gary Lineker, 1.3 million to read out football results back in the day.
I'm going on your Zoe Ball stats, okay? Right.
Give me some balls.
£1 million a year, 20 grand a week. Right, so she presents the breakfast show 5 days a week, £4 grand a day. How long was her breakfast show, I wonder?
3 hours.
3 hours, so she's getting about 1,333 quid per hour.
Most of it is records.
Nice work if you can get it, eh?
I tell you something, if I was going to go back to listening to the breakfast show on Radio 2, I would only do so if Peter Bleksley was spinning those tunes. Peter, before we get to the break, we've got a big discussion today. It's huge, and executive producer Dean Spencer is, let me tell you, spitting feathers about this, okay? Takes a lot to trigger him. He's very mild-mannered. He thinks it's too soon for Christmas songs and Christmas movies because it is the 15th of November.
It is.
And his view is the month has got to have the letter D at the beginning, which is December, right?
Yes.
He thinks Christmas is December. I beg to differ. What's your view?
I go even further than the esteemed Dean, because my birthday is on the 11th of December. So I do not acknowledge Christmas in any way, shape or form until my birthday is over. We don't buy the tree. We don't put up any decorations. We don't send cards. We don't buy presents. We have nothing to do with Christmas until my birthday is done and dusted.
Let me know on the text board, text the word talking your message to 87222. Is it too early for Christmas songs? I don't think it is, and I don't think it's too early for Christmas movies. And shall I tell you for why, folks? Because I think we've had a very tough year. It's been, the egregious Labour government. We've destroyed the economy. We've had woke madness. We've had net zero. We've got inflation, unemployment. So it's all, it's very doom and gloom. And therefore, if I can have a bit of Shakin' Stevens and a little bit of Paul McCartney and Elton John and Mariah Carey and Wham, then I'm all over that like a rash. So let me know what you think. Is it time for Christmas tunes? Are we allowed? By the way, this is we're gonna work with our friends at Virgin Radio on this, because Steve Denyer is a big star at Virgin Radio. He's the guy that's on just before Chris Evans, and they are all over the Christmas tunes, and there's a special channel called Virgin Radio Christmas. So what do you think? Is it too soon? I don't think it is. I think we need it. I think we're going to have a 6-week Christmas this year on Talk Breakfast, and maybe, are we allowed, Dean, to play 1 or 2 Christmas tunes? What do you think? He reckons we can. There you go. Well, that's great news. Folks, so much to get through. Donald Trump to sue the BBC for up to $5 billion. This is not a drill. More on that, plus the front pages next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, Mark and Peter, says Rachel. I hope President Trump sues the backside of the BBC. He will be doing the British a favour. Once a broadcast, I've just that's a little typo there. Yes, I support free speech, but that comes with responsibility. Rachel, what a brilliant text that is. If you're just joining us at 6:35 in the morning, Donald Trump has decided that he will pursue legal action against the BBC. Now, the chairman of the BBC wrote to Donald Trump earlier this week and hoped that would be the end of it, because Trump said, give me an apology and I won't sue. He's not happy with the apology, which he thinks is a sorry but not sorry. And therefore he will pursue legal action, potentially costing our national state broadcaster up to $5 billion. And I've got to say, largely on the message board and in the calls, you are supportive of this move by Donald Trump because you want the BBC to wake up and smell the coffee and realise how biased it is. Dale says, Mark, I know 3 people from America that have seen the Trump speech. They watched it through a VPN, so I can believe a lot more have seen it too. Americans have definitely seen it also more recently. Tony says, good morning. King Charles should dissolve Parliament and put the military in charge of the UK for 2 years before holding full and fair elections, with the military on the ballot paper as an option. Democracy at present is an illusion. Very, very unhappy there, Tony, with the state of the country at the moment. And that's the point, that what's happening at the BBC, Peter Blexley, is indicative of the public institutions of this country.
Yes, but I don't quite want a military coup to replace this government. Appalling as they are, I don't want the generals in Parliament making decisions. That's a bit extreme. But of course, this government is an absolute shambles, and I'm sure we'll get on to discussing that in greater depth when we do the front pages. And the BBC is rotten in so many regards, does need huge reform. And if Donald Trump is the catalyst that brings that about, then more's the better.
And happy days, isn't it? Well, let's take a look at those front pages, Peter, and we'll start with the country's newspaper of record, The Times. Reeves banks on stealth tax. So remember the confusion that just a few days ago they were, what do they say, rolling the pitch for a rising of income tax, which would have torn up the manifesto promise. Well, that's now on hold. The Chancellor will place a stealth tax on workers and pensioners at the heart of the budget after dropping a manifesto-breaking plan to increase income tax. The Chancellor was accused of presiding over a shambles this week after abandoning plans to increase the basic rate of income tax following better economic forecasts. Reeves had spent weeks strongly signalling that she was preparing to break Labour's pledge, including a highly unusual press conference in Downing Street. Her change of heart unnerved the markets and increased the cost of government borrowing. What a Horlicks she's made of this economy, folks. And also, the King seized the chance with both hands to cut a cake in the shape of a lovely castle in Wales. And this was to celebrate his birthday. May we wish the King many happy returns. The Daily Mail. Chancellor's lost control. Reeves accused of presiding over most shambolic budget in history after humiliating U-turn on hiking income tax. Daily Express. Show you care and stop delaying a right to die law. A terminally ill grandmother has pleaded with peers to stop delaying the right to die legislation. Turning 77, asked the Daily Express, a walk in the park, sir, in a lovely photograph, a great portrait of King Charles, where he is most happy in his gardens. The Sun newspaper, Robbie, fat jabs making me blind. Superstar Robbie Williams fears he may be going blind from taking fat jabs. The singer, who's 51, says his vision is blurry and getting worse. He believes the Mounjaro he takes for weight loss could be to blame, admitting he struggles to see fans when serenading them with She's the One at his live shows. Not the only pop star to have sight issues. Did you know poor old Elton John has got majorly restricted eyesight now, which is a real tragedy for, in my view, a true national icon. The Guardian newspaper, workers face £7.5 billion rise in tax. Despite Reeves' U-turn, Rachel Reeves will raise £7.5 billion from millions of workers in the budget by freezing tax thresholds after her decision to scrap controversial plans to raise income tax led to a sell-off in the bond market. And US planning divided Gaza controlled by troops. The Daily Mirror, I'm a Celebrity exclusive. EastEnders Shona, I'm in the jungle to show anxiety who's boss. Yeah, you're doing that. It's got nothing to do with 100 grand, is it, dear, and your mortgage? The Daily Star, it's Peter Mandelson. It's a bit of a shocking story, this one. Sacked ambassador in new leak scandal. Very, very good work from the Star. Fired ambassador Peter Mandelson, of course a grandee of the Labour Party, is in hot water for appearing to wee against a wall after sharing wine with George Osborne. I don't know what is more concerning, Peter Blexley, weeing against the wall, allegedly, or having drinks with George Osborne. I don't know what I'm more upset by.
Weeing against the wall, to be avoided. It's a bit antisocial, although I must admit I may have done that once or twice in my life, out of necessity, out of need. And let's face it, there's not a lot of public toilets around these days.
No, although I want to ask you about the legal side of that, because I was en route somewhere a few years ago on my little motorbike, and I was desperate for the restroom, as the Americans say. So I pulled over at a petrol station. Happy days. The petrol station toilet was out of order. At which point I basically meandered to the behind the back of the petrol station. There's nothing there, just a couple of bins and this and that. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm mid-flow, and what would you call it, plainclothes officer pitches up behind me, hand on the shoulder. I thought I'd pulled, by the way. Yeah. No, unfortunately.
Enough of that, thank you.
So basically, he said, you can't do that. It's an offence. And he said, you could get in real trouble for that. Anyway, he gave me a bit of a ticking off, which is great, because the point about being a policeman is partly to educate, isn't it?
Yeah.
And to say, I know what you think you're doing is harmless, but it's an offence. And he said, if you were near a school or something, this could be like an aggravating factor.
Exactly.
And I think he said that the risk is, he said, he said, I realise what you're doing. You're having
a wee,
having a wee, but it could be framed as indecent exposure.
Well, there are many other factors that have to come into play before somebody can be arrested for an offence of indecent exposure. Having a wee is not indecent exposure.
Are you sure about that?
Yes, I'm positive about it.
Good.
There are other factors,
he said you could
which I'm not going to mention on a breakfast show.
Glad. He also said you could go on a register. I mean, he scared the bejesus out of me, I'll be honest with you.
Yes, well, and I can understand the tactics he deployed, but he's not strictly correct. Having a wee is antisocial, but sometimes it is born out of absolute necessity. Now, on the occasions that my wife and I are driving together, and there is
Where's this going, Peter? It's a family show.
There is an absolute need, and I might say to my wife, I need to do this.
Yes.
Sarah will always position the car and get out and cover my back, just so that there can be no allegation that I was doing anything other than relieving myself.
I don't want to hear about Sarah and positions at 6:43 in the morning, but I tell you something, it's been a journey and I've learnt plenty. Not a good look for a former cabinet minister and a former ambassador to the United Kingdom. I mean, this is an act of poor judgment, would you not say?
Yeah, indeed. And now I don't drink too much coffee if I'm going on a long journey.
Yes.
I won't, if Sarah's going to drive me home from a pub, I won't drink pints and pints and pints.
Yeah.
Because I might get caught short on the journey.
And then she'll have to do her position again.
Indeed, absolutely. So as I've got older, I try and cater so that I do not have to urinate in a public place.
And I had no idea the conversation would go in this direction, but that's the magic of live broadcasting, isn't it, Peter? Can we talk about, I want to get to the Boris wave actually in just a moment, but can I get a quick word from you on Rachel Reeves, who I think has got to be sacked. I think it's a matter of urgency that she's sacked. I think she should be sacked before the budget. Well, when is the budget? It's tomorrow, isn't it?
No, it's
Monday.
26th.
26th.
No, it's a week on Wednesday.
A week on Wednesday. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm very confused by the dates here. So that is exactly right. The 26th, which is Wednesday. And I think she should be fired before then and get someone in to do a proper budget, because she is such a klutz. And even The Guardian, Peter, appear to have parted company with the Chancellor, because their description of what's going on is extremely negative, right? Rachel Reeves will raise £7 billion from millions of workers in the budget by freezing tax thresholds after her decision to scrap controversial plans to raise income tax led to a sell-off in the bond market. She's lost The Guardian. They're not trying to spin this anymore.
No. Well, what's happened, and as you will be well aware, I am no economist, but apparently when she said she was going to, well, when, shall we say, they leaked, my goodness, don't this government leak.
They're leaky as anything.
When it was leaked that income tax would go up by 2p, the bond markets, the yield markets, in other words, the people that lend the government money, were actually enthused by that because they thought it might bring about financial stability. So they were pleased at the news of possible income tax rises. When, of course, she U-turns on that and they leak again yesterday that income tax won't go up, it caused some jitters, and apparently the cost of borrowing rose by 0.12% as a result of this uncertainty. So the uncertainty that 11 Downing Street is creating by leaking and then having to turn turtle and then appearing to have economic policy which is being blown by the wind and whatever particular direction that may blow is unsettling markets, does have a cost in terms of cold, hard cash.
Well, you're so right about that, and that's why we love having you on, because you live in the real world, and sometimes you get these Westminster bubble stories where someone's put expenses in for this, or someone's, whatever, sort of, didn't reveal details of their CV. All of that is unacceptable, but what really bothers me and concerns me is stuff that impacts my viewers and listeners directly. And this will impact our viewers and listeners directly, because with her dithering the cost of government borrowing has gone up.
Yep.
Who pays for that? You and I and my viewers and listeners. So that's why it's a big problem. This is rank incompetence. I can't think of a worse chancellor in the history of this country.
Well, it shows a true lack of discipline. And now I'm talking about number 10 Downing Street as well as number 11.
Yeah.
There is clearly a lack of discipline there because so much is leaked. Look at this week, and the very undignified is Wes Streeting making a leadership bid or not kind of drivel. You know, there's a rampant lack of discipline. I think it stems from Starmer's lack of authority, his lack of the fact that he's a very poor orator and he's not really taking his party with him. We've already seen the divides. Look at when he tried to enact some welfare reforms and all the lunatic left went, no, 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 you can't do that.
Correct.
He has a real lack of authority problem within his own party, within his cabinet, I think, and within his team, who clearly leak like a sieve.
And do you know something, though? It's not only leaks, is it? Because this move by Rachel Reeves a few days ago to have an unprecedented early morning press conference was there to roll the pitch for this increase in income tax, and she's clearly changed her mind. So she doesn't know what she's doing. It's chaos.
Yeah, because the Office of Budget Responsibility then came out and said, actually, the forecasts are a bit better than we thought they might be. So she's gone, oh, well, then do I have to raise income tax by 2p? No, you don't, actually. You can find it elsewhere. Complete change of policy. Markets unnerved, very undignified, and as you so correctly pointed out, we end up paying one way or another.
Of course we do. It's an absolute horror show. Well, listen, a big story coming up. Boris waved migrants to face a 10-year ban on claiming benefits. Will that work? Is it too little too late? That's next.
That I was removed from the show, that should have been enough. And then not invited to Late and Live in the finale, that again, OK, I take it on the chin. But then to not even be invited to the untelevised rap party, I think it's a step too far, to be honest. I think they're trying to make an example of me and trying to castrate any future contestants from going against the grain, from putting their head above the parapet, delving into those fragile subjects.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
If you're just joining us at 6:51 on Talk Breakfast, let me tell you that Donald Trump has decided to sue the BBC not for $1 billion, but for up to $5 billion following the doctored clip on Panorama. Ben is in London. Good morning, Mark. I have every respect for Donald Trump. He's a leader of enormous strength. He's right to sue the corrupt, woke BBC. We could do with Starmer being half as good as him. And if so, then maybe we as a country would be better off than we are now with a weak, slimy, slippery Starmer leadership. Ben, thank you for that. Everything Trump has said is so true, says Sharon. The BBC needs to definitely be defunded, and we, the British people, should not be held hostage to pay the licence fee for such a bad service that we do not want but are forced to pay for. This is not fair or right. I hate the BBC, yet I have to pay a licence fee for something I don't like or want to be part of. And if not, I will go to prison. Well, Sharon, I do hope that you won't go to prison. I can't have that. You're one of my most valued audience members, and we need you on board with your daily truth bombs. We also get a lot of absolute truth bombs from Cliff in Berkshire, who says, good morning, Mark. How have we allowed the left to take over so much of our public sector and institutions? What a great question. Have single issue groups had too much influence within our institutions? Have the common purpose company had too much influence as well? Cliff, I'm almost certainly think that they have. Talk, I'm very proud of the Donalds, says an unnamed texter. And Paul says, Mark and Peter, we know who the production team are at the BBC and on Panorama because it's on the BBC website. Good morning, Mark and Peter. The BBC, woke in and leftist, and there will be a few nervous chats around Islington and North London this weekend over their chai lattes. Trump is 100% right, Paul in Stoke. Thank you, Paul, for that. Listen, so many messages. I could spend the next 3 hours doing your messages, but I will power through them as well as your calls as well, 0344 499 1000. But we've got another big story for you in the company of Peter Blexley, former Met Police detective. And this, Peter, is about the so-called Boris wave of migrants who entered the country in the last few years. And migrants who came to Britain as part of the so-called Boris wave will face a 10-year ban on claiming benefits. Shabana Mahmood, the relatively new Home Secretary, is expected to announce plans to force up to 1.6 million migrants who arrived under Boris Johnson's immigration regime to wait a decade before they're entitled to indefinite leave to remain and benefits. There are fears that the migrants could add hundreds of millions of pounds to Britain's growing benefits bill because more than 800,000 are in low-paid work, meaning they and their families could get welfare support. Your reaction?
This country is in such a financial mess because I think we pay about £100 billion a year for our borrowing.
We do. And by the way, that's not even a repayment, that's just the
cost.
Interest.
Yeah, just the cost of borrowing, let alone don't get anywhere near the lump sum.
Britain's got an interest-only mortgage, basically.
Yeah, exactly. We also have a benefits bill in excess of £100 billion a year. So imagine if those matters were addressed in some regard, what a different country this could be. What better services we could have, what better roads we could have, hospitals, schools, police service properly funded, prisons and the such like. This country could look so very different. But it doesn't because of the pathetic performances of repeated governments, including the lamentable, the appalling Boris Johnson throwing the doors open and letting people flood into this country. Rob Bates is a man who works as the research director of the Centre for Migration Control.
He's a genius, and he's on the show at 7:30 this morning.
Well, wonderful. May I just use a few of his words ahead of his appearance? He said about this whole story, he got all the data, by the way, right? Yeah. So he was really on the game. He said, hundreds of thousands of people who arrived under the Boris wave are paying very little into the system and in a few weeks' time will begin qualifying for indefinite leave to remain, allowing them to access benefits that we pay for. That last line was mine, not Mr. Bates's. Mr. Bates goes on and says, please listen to this, audience. We already have over 1.2 million foreign nationals claiming universal credit. Unless the Boris wave is blocked from receiving settled status, this cohort will cost the country hundreds of billions of pounds in the coming year.
Now, can we for a nanosecond be positive about the government and suggest that actually we might have a half-decent Home Secretary?
We can be. She's certainly talking tougher, perhaps, than her predecessor. She's talking about rolling out a model similar to the Danish model. But, and you'll forgive me if I'm using the words of others today, but I think it's really important because sometimes others give us a different perspective or might have a somewhat greater insight to us. And there are words of caution issued by The Sun today in their comment column on page 12 when they talk about Shabana Mahmood and her attempt to implement a Danish system. They say, basically talks about Labour not being tough enough, saying that if Shabana Mahmood can say all these tough words about migration, but if the loony left of the Labour Party kind of try to block her and object, and we know about some of those rampant fools there, not to mention some of the independents who have been elected on other platforms and the like, your Corbynistas and those kind of people. If there's a huge resistance to what Shabana Mahmood says she's going to try to implicate, then the loony left of the party will frustrate her, will stop her doing that, just as they stopped Starmer's attempts to reform welfare. So maybe there is such a loony left mindset in the minds of so many Labour MPs that what Shabana Mahmood is going to announce in her speech on Monday may never come to pass.
That's right. Even if the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary want to do the right thing, the party may not let them, which is why we're in for a very bumpy 3 or 4 years. Well, I tell you something, we've got a very bumpy 3 hours to come because Donald Trump, the leader of the free world, has decided he will proceed with his legal action against the BBC for damages of up to $5 billion. We're going to bring you reaction from across the political spectrum. This is an international diplomatic incident, the BBC in the dock and potentially facing an enormous bill. Your reaction, 0344 499 1000, text the word talk in your message to 87222. So much to get through. That, by the way, the Trump decision to sue the BBC is the subject of today's Dolan's Dispatch. You won't want to miss it. I'm not pulling my punch. So much to get through. Keep it talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Two minutes past 7, top of the morning, one and all. I'm Mark Dolan, and this is Talk Breakfast. Your weekend starts here, a packed 3 hours to come, and breaking news this morning. The most powerful man in the world, Donald Trump, has confirmed he is going to sue the BBC for up to $5 billion following the badly doctored panorama clip which misrepresented his speech on January the 6th, 2021. Speaking on Air Force One, a furious president plans to exact revenge from the corporation after what he saw as a mealy-mouthed non-apology from the BBC. Well, I'm going to bring you reaction from across the political spectrum. This is a story with global and diplomatic implications. America is our number one economic, military and political ally, which is now at war with our national state broadcaster. We'll also be joined by the Big Brother star, cancelled for his political beliefs. Is ITV institutionally woke? And given the chaos surrounding preparations for this year's budget, should Rachel Reeves be fired before the November the 26th budget in order to stabilise Britain's economy? Should Keir Starmer sack Rachel Reeves in order to save his premiership? And the rather forthright new Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, is going to make the Boris Wave migrants wait longer for benefits. Migrants coming to Britain as part of the Boris Wave will now face a 10-year ban on claiming benefits. Is it enough, or is that too little too late? My priority for the next 3 hours is to get your opinions on the national television and radio airways. My phone number is 03444991000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. And also, if you're busy, then drop us a voice note. I love those as well. However you communicate, it's all about your opinions. And Donald Trump's decision to sue the BBC is the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch at 8 o'clock. I'm not pulling my punches. I'll reveal my views on this. And let me tell you, today's Dolan's Dispatch, it might get me cancelled. It actually might. Good. Reacting to the big stories, with me in the studio, the legendary former Met Police detective Peter Blexley. Peter, good to see you. A massive headache for the BBC and perhaps, at last, some much-needed accountability.
Let's hope so. And when I submit my allegation of crime that I want the Metropolitan Police to investigate this afternoon, namely that somebody within the BBC who spliced that speech, doctored it, gave a false representation, therefore committed misconduct in public office, let's see what the Met Police have to say. Watch this space. And if anybody in the audience wants to do the same, fine. I'll also put it out in my socials what I've done once I've done it.
A very significant move. Misconduct in public office, given the fact that whoever the editor was, whoever the line producer was, they are a public servant. So you could potentially frame it as, would that be a criminal act?
Yes, misconduct in public office is a very serious criminal offence.
What sort of punishment, what sort of sentence would be appropriate for that kind of crime?
Well, people have been imprisoned for very serious offences under that act. It's a unique kind of law in many regards, because misconduct in public office, you can actually, doing nothing can be the crime.
Of course, because you omit, which is still misleading.
Yes.
Well, that's fascinating. Are the BBC guilty of misconduct in public office, given the propaganda nature of not just the Panorama clip, but the Newsnight clip as well, for which you and I, by the way, have paid for the privilege of being lied to by the BBC. And certainly, briefly, Peter, if you can, if this had happened in the UK in the run-up to a UK general election, that would be very serious indeed.
Oh, indeed. I think it's a very serious matter, regardless. Yeah. I think it's deeply, deeply serious. The crux for me will be, do the Crown Prosecution Service regard BBC employees as being in public service? Because the misconduct, to me, seems absolutely obvious.
Wow. Damning words from Peter Blexley, who knows the law inside out. With us on the lines, Chris in Epsom. Good morning, Chris. Welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Morning, Mark. Morning, Peter.
Top of the morning. Now, Chris, we're waking up to the news, for those joining us at 7:08 in the morning, that Donald Trump is going to sue the BBC for $5 billion. What say you?
Good for him. It's possibly the only way that the BBC will get sorted out properly, because they've been nipping at the edges. You know, I'm. By the way, Peter, I would like to put that forward to the Metropolitan Police as well. The thing is that I always tried to like Trump because I always hoped he'd do what he said he would do in his campaigning, and I saw that Panorama programme, and it changed my mind on him, and I thought that he was deliberately causing an insurrection.
Wow.
And violence.
So that programme misled you and changed your view of Donald Trump to the negative, Chris?
Absolutely.
Wow.
And I swear to you, it did. And if it did it for me, who I might say myself, I'm fairly intelligent and well versed and well read in world politics, I absolutely changed my mind and thought the man should be arrested. And it's incredible to think that although the actual, what you haven't actually said is the rot, as Peter put it, it goes through all the editors, line managers, producers, all the people that are in the cutting room. All of those people, all right, are guilty of misconduct in a public office because they all knew about it. Now, that programme was actually produced by was commissioned to another production company. But even so, after they've produced it, it goes to the BBC for them to view it and to give it approval. So you've got two lots of people involved in that. But then you've got the Tonight programme that did exactly the same months earlier, where it was called out live and nothing happened about it.
You're so right. It happened on air, and it was Mick Mulvaney, who's a good friend of mine, former Trump chief of staff, who said, "Excuse me, BBC, that was a spliced clip which was deeply misleading. The presenter didn't react, and the corporation, Chris, did nothing."
Absolutely. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous. And if I can... This has not just been happening now, Mark, all right? I can give you a couple of other examples. 1979, Panorama were caught paying kids on a council estate in Northern Ireland to spread tomato sauce on themselves and to say they'd been beaten up by the military. Unfortunately for them, a patrol from Parachute Regiment came round the corner and caught them doing it. Then you've got another one that you've not mentioned, is the cut, the edit that made the Queen look like she was storming out of a photo shoot. Then you've got the one that really sinks the BBC to an even deeper low, is John Sweeney, who was caught. He was caught by a hidden camera and microphone, plying a young girl with mixed cocktails, saying, "Oh God, don't worry, let's have some fun. The BBC are paying." Then when he thought she was lathered enough, he asked her to make up sexual harassment claims that they could use against Tommy Robinson. Now, Sweeney's been missing since then, but it's all online. And what they've done is beyond comprehension. I remember, I'm 64, same age as Peter. I grew up thinking of the BBC as Auntie Beeb, the teller of truths,
yes,
the uncoverer of misjustices. How in just a lifetime have they gone from Auntie Beeb, right, and done a complete 180 and become the woke lying brigade?
It's happened slowly, hasn't it, Chris? And we've seen it in the public institutions of this country. What a brilliant call. You've spoken with real passion and conviction there. What's your reaction to what Chris had to say, Peter?
It is such an honour to sit in this chair and listen to the voice of Britain when people contribute like they do. Thank you for having me. It's a true honour, and so much of what Chris says, I found myself just sitting here and nodding in agreement with.
That's exactly right, and you do what I do when I get my calls, which is I take notes, because I learn so much from what you've got to say. What about in America? What is happening in the United States? What is the mood out there in the USA following the bombshell news that Donald Trump is going to sue the BBC for up to $5 billion? Well, Cindy is in Pigeon in Michigan in the United States. She joins us now. Hi, Cindy.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well. Is this story making headlines in the United States?
It is big time, yeah. And I think Trump is just trying to show the BBC and teach them a lesson.
Well, I think that's exactly right. He's angry, isn't he? He's furious about this.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's making big news.
And is there a concern? Yeah. What do you think, Cindy? Yeah, sorry, go on.
Oh, no, I was just saying, I hope he wins this lawsuit.
Yeah, and why do you think so? Why do you think it's important that he's successful in this legal action, Cindy?
Because really the BBC is a bunch of propaganda. They're biased. This mistake was very amateur.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't have done it.
And is there a chance, Cindy, that some Americans will have seen the heavily edited clip, because that would have implications for democracy in the United States, given that there was an election last year?
Right, yeah. I haven't, I personally didn't watch it on TV, but a lot of people did.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly very concerning. And regarding the BBC, I mean, what do Americans think of the BBC, Cindy?
The same as I said, it's a bunch of propaganda.
Right, and would that be the equivalent of some of the networks in the United States that are considered to be left-leaning?
Yeah, definitely.
Right, and that would be what sort of
Legacy TV.
CNN and MSNBC, those sorts of networks?
Oh, it's a bunch of trash.
Wow, a bunch of trash. Indeed. Would you listen to or watch the BBC yourself, Cindy? Because I know they do have some services in the United States. You're laughing.
Yeah, no, thanks.
And do you think Mr. Trump, President Trump, will be successful in this legal action? Do you think he'll get compensation?
I think he'll get compensation, not quite $5 billion, but he's going to get a pretty penny.
Cindy, it's been brilliant to talk. Thank you for the US perspective there.
Thank you.
And we'll catch up soon. Do stay in touch. Of course, this show is very global. Talk is very global. We are based in the UK, but a lot of the issues are global in their nature, aren't they, Peter? Whether it's concerns about woke, the cost of net zero, political correctness, all the rest of it, mad energy policies. And there, Cindy is saying that actually America has got a media scene which is riven with bias, very much like here in the UK.
Unfortunately, in recent times, I've often said that this country is a laughingstock. Some people have balked at that. Some people have taken offence at it.
Yeah.
But it's based on comments that I've had with friends who live and work abroad.
Yes.
And they're saying the way we are perceived, I say we, Britain is perceived abroad, quite literally is as a laughingstock. The open borders, the pathetic government and so on and so forth. For Cindy, who's in the US, to turn round and describe the BBC as amateur, in other words, that splicing was amateur. Our national broadcaster, the corporation that we pay for, the corporation whose first word in its title is British. And that's how we're regarded on the other side of the pond by our closest ally, our American cousins.
It's devastating, isn't it? Folks, so much more to come. Some very, very big stories before we lose the brilliant Peter Bleksley, including a quite outrageous investigation into someone that had the expression "stop the boats" written on their plaster cast in hospital. You couldn't make it up. We're going to speak to a military legend about that and much more next.
Credit in this.
And as I say, I know a lot of people that, you know, won't go out there in the evening now, won't go to the parks or anything in the evening. And before I spoke to you, I spoke to a couple of much younger friends of mine, and they said, you know, oh, it's rubbish round here now. There's no hope for them. They just feel like they're being left behind.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is 7:21. You are listening to Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan with you until 10 a.m. And the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch at 8 o'clock is the news, if you're just joining us, that Donald Trump is going to sue the BBC, even though they've apologised, and he's going to sue them for $5 billion. You heard me right. Listen, we'll get more reaction on that with your calls and texts as well very shortly. Perhaps just this from Joanna in Salisbury. Good morning, Mark and Peter. Misconduct in public office, that's what the BBC are guilty of. Incitement to murder. They took a pot shot at Trump between Newsnight and Panorama. Peter says, good morning, Mark and Peter. The BBC news programmes are basically dishonest. They only give their version of what's happening. I believe that the doctoring of Trump's speech was deliberate, not an error. The BBC cannot be trusted and their licence not renewed. Let them survive or not in the commercial market like the rest. So many more messages. I'll get to them shortly. But we've got a shocking story now, which is a suspected Walter Mitty has been arrested after being accused of posing as a Royal Navy Admiral with a chest full of medals on Remembrance Sunday. Let's get reaction to this from a decorated military man himself and an international border control expert, Henry Bolton. Good morning, Henry.
Morning, Mark. Good morning.
Henry, it's good to see you again. Thank you for your very moving contribution on Remembrance Sunday last weekend. It was a video that went viral on YouTube because you spoke with such emotion and it really resonated with so many of my viewers and listeners. Let me ask you about this character. What do we know about this story?
Well, I probably know as much as you do, Mark, and, but I understand that we've got a 64-year-old former history teacher who was very briefly in the Combined Cadet Force, which is the cadet force within the school system, some years ago, who's worn the uniform of a Royal Navy Admiral, as you've said, with about a dozen medals on his chest at a remembrance parade. Pushed his way in, actually laid a wreath, and he was wearing medals that, I mean, that simply do not tally with Royal Naval Service. So the whole thing is rather insane, and I say that literally. I rather feel that this individual has got mental health problems. And is almost to be pitied. It's a ridiculous thing to do, and he's embarrassed himself and probably all the people who know him.
Yes, and Peter Blexley, this sort of impersonation is chilling, sinister, and dangerous.
I have to say, first of all, though, when Mr. Bolton comes on, I sit up a little bit straighter.
I know you do.
Okay.
Your posture is good. I always say you're quite erect this morning, Peter. So well
yes, thank you. Moving swiftly on. Yeah, I understand they've seized a uniform, they've seized some medals. There's a possible allegation that he may have dressed up like this in the past, but I'm sure it won't be very long before we hear the outcome of the police investigation.
No, and Henry, let me draw your attention to a fantastic story spotted by Peter this morning when he was looking through the papers, and it's a corker, I've got to say. Leg plaster woke row, outcast. A man who wrote "Stop the Boats" on his mum's cast after she broke her leg faced a safeguarding probe by the local council. Trevor Lazelle said that his 89-year-old mum, Shirley, agreed with the message, but a doctor saw it and lodged a complaint. The financial advisor received a call from Southend Council and staff visited the home that he shares with his parents on Thursday. Trevor is a full-time carer to his mother and said, "I was furious when I got the call and found it absolutely ridiculous." I mean, this, Henry Bolton, is an example, is it not, of just how detached people that work in the public sector are from the opinions and views of the vast majority of the British public.
Entirely, Mark. And I've worked in some of the most authoritarian countries in the world.
Yes.
And you don't come across stories like that. This is beyond the pale. There are opinions and whatever, but the purpose of the doctor in this case and so on is to provide medical support, not to act on political opinion, which is what this is. And the other thing, I mean, Mark, you probably covered it at some point, I don't know, but there was recently a survey of NHS managers that said I think it was 40-something, 47% or something, that's probably not quite the figure, but as I recall it, but 40-something% of those managers saying that their staff are in fear of the George Cross. Absolute baloney.
That is wild. I mean, this is the greatest honour you can receive in the military for your service.
Sorry, Mark. I didn't mean. I meant the St George Cross flag.
Oh, I see. Oh, what?
So,
they're afraid of the flag.
Afraid of the flag. It intimidates them. Well, again, I've been to countries the most authoritarian in the world, and the flag doesn't in any way intimidate anybody. It's behaviour that intimidates. And what we've got here is we've got activism within the NHS, which is building deliberately, I think, building a sense of fear that doesn't exist. Because if the managers in the NHS are starting to talk publicly about the St George's flag being intimidating and there being a risk to their staff, when in fact there is no empirical evidence whatsoever to back that up, then they are going to create that fear. The whole thing is utterly appalling. And I think we've got a serious problem in society in allowing this sort of, that is very dangerous activism to grow. Nobody is doing anything about it. There is no leadership in the NHS or anywhere else standing up for what Peter was saying earlier, which is Great Britain, the United Kingdom, the English, the Welsh, the Scottish, the Irish, and saying this is who we are, these are our principles, and and pushing back against these people who are trying to do everything they can to make this country look and therefore ultimately behave as though there is a threat.
Peter.
First of all, I want to give a shout out to Trevor, who wrote Stop the Boats on his mum's plaster cast. Shirley is 89. She's got brittle bones. I hope you get well soon, Shirley. I hope that leg mends. I've just pulled my driving licence out of my phone because on my driving licence is the Union Jack. OK? Now, I wonder, does the Union Jack still appear on people's driving licences? Mine is quite old. If it does, and the Union Jack triggers you, surrender your driving licence, get off the road, buy yourself a bicycle.
Yeah, that's it, and have your passport shredded as well. I mean,
if the presence of the British flag or the English flag offends you that much, and you're so worried about it, leave the country.
Well, we had an interview with Ant Middleton last weekend as well, Henry. It was a very eventful show on Sunday, and that video was watched by over 1 million people because it contained an awful lot of truth and common sense within it. One of the things that Ant said that we need in this country is law and order. We can all agree on that, especially ex-copper Peter Bleksley. But the other thing he said is that we need to restore our culture. And it seems to be that a lot of the problems that we discuss on Talk Breakfast come back to the same thing, which is culture, values, the idea of Britishness, the idea of, firm borders and common sense policies. So this story of the plaster cast, yes, it's a bit of a laugh and it's page 9 in The Sun, but it represents a cultural divide in our country.
It does. And I've talked a lot about... I was a United Nations administrator, if you like, governor in Kosovo. And we had a serious problem there with regards Muslim Albanians pushing back on Orthodox Serbs. This is I was there before the conflict, during the conflict and after the conflict, but this was after the conflict. And the Serbs who were there were in the main old, elderly, infirm, had nowhere to go, had no involvement in the conflict whatsoever. But there was this displacement of these people, and it wasn't a guns and bullets displacement. It wasn't a violence displacement, it was a cultural displacement. And with the Muslim Albanians demanding, for example, in a case that I had to deal with, that they would be allowed to build a mosque on the graveyard or the churchyard on top of the graves of a 12th century Orthodox church, when there were no Albanians living in that area whatsoever. And they were demanding that this be allowed to happen. And when I refused that, then they obviously pushed back. But the whole thing was that they were saying, look, that would demonstrate that we can live in peace with our Serbian brothers. And I said, well, what do you think the Serbs think about that? To which they responded, well, if they've got a problem with it, that's their problem. And we officially, in the United Nations and in NATO, called this passive ethnic cleansing and/or cultural displacement. And that is... I see what's happening in Western Europe and the United Kingdom as being the same process. It's slower, it's more insidious, and it has permeated through education, healthcare, the civil service, all sorts of places, but it is there. And I recognise it from Kosovo and indeed from Bosnia and other parts of the Balkans. And it is something that there led to conflict, violent conflict. And I want, pray God, that we avoid that happening. But to avoid that happening here, then we are going to have to see leadership that actually stands up for our culture, for our values, for the principles of this country, and for the institutions that actually built this country.
We always love having you on the show, Henry. You talk so much sense. Have an excellent Saturday and we'll catch up soon. My thanks there to Henry Bolton, who is a decorated military veteran himself and an international border control expert. If only someone like that was in the Home Office, we'd be in a far better state. Let me tell you that if Peter Blexley was the Home Secretary, we'd be sorted as well. An esteemed former Met Police detective and, of course, brilliant broadcaster as well. Peter, thank you for today.
Thank you for having me. May I just say before I go, the balkanisation of the United Kingdom is happening. We have more Muslims in the UK than Welsh people.
Wow, what a development that is. Listen, Peter, we'll catch up soon. Thank you for your company. Have an excellent weekend yourself. And, of course, Peter, a fixture on Talk will return imminently. Folks, coming up before 8 o'clock, don't forget 8 o'clock, Dolan's Dispatch is a really big one. It's about Donald Trump's decision to sue the BBC for $5 billion. This is happening, folks. The apology didn't work. He's going to take the broadcaster to the cleaners. Also, Woke ITV cancel a Big Brother contestant for his political opinions. A fresh development on that story. He's live in the studio before 8 o'clock. But next up, Shabana Mahmood, the new Home Secretary, is going to prevent Boris Wave migrants from claiming benefits for 10 years. Is it enough? Will it work? Does it undo the damage? I'll be speaking to a top expert on that next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
If you're just joining us, we bring you the developing story that Donald Trump has decided he is going to proceed with his legal action against the BBC to the tune of $5 billion. That number could grow because that $5 billion in damages relates only to the Panorama clip that was heavily doctored. And of course, we've developed since then the story that Newsnight had a doctored clip as well. for which the BBC may be answerable. This number of 5 billion could grow. It's the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch at 8 a.m. I recommend you don't miss it. But next up, let's talk about the news that the so-called Boris wave of immigrants to this country over the last few years will have to wait potentially 10 years to receive benefits and indefinite leave to remain under stricter plans on the watch of the new Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood. Let's get reaction now from a very wise man indeed and a very knowledgeable man on the subject of migration. It is Robert Bates, who is the Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. Top of the morning to you, Robert.
Morning, Mark. How you doing?
I'm very well. What's your understanding of this policy being proposed by Shabana Mahmood?
Well, at the moment, it's very limited because, of course, the government hasn't actually put out much detail on how they intend to go about it. This is something that they've actually been floating since very much earlier in the year. My understanding of what they actually intend to do is something that I thought they wouldn't go near, which was retrospectively apply these changes to indefinite leave to remain to those individuals who were already in the country and actually require individuals who arrived under Boris Johnson, when, of course, we saw a huge surge in inward migration, require them to wait 10 years rather than 5 years to obtain this settled status. At that point, an individual obtains the right to get benefits, to bring over family members. They get put on a pathway to citizenship. So this is something, this so-called Boris wave and the imminent granting of ILR to them is something that a lot of people have been warning about for quite a time. Of course, we're only a few weeks away actually, until these individuals actually start putting in their applications. It's something that, some forecasts suggest will cost us hundreds of billions of pounds over the lifetimes of these migrants. So it's something that has been a huge source of concern. If the Labour Party actually do intend to really clamp down on this and actually mean what they say when they're going to stop this settlement happening, then they really need to act very quickly because, as I say, from the 1st of January, those first migrants that arrived when Boris Johnson really threw open our borders after Brexit, they'll begin putting in their applications. And from that point, really, the process will take a hold and we'll end up with large numbers of individuals actually getting this status before the Labour Party might have even had a chance to act. So, look, at the moment, it seems like it really is just a few lines in a few newspaper articles. There seems nothing more concrete than that. But if it is to take place, then I think it's an encouraging step.
It looks to be a step in the right direction under a new Home Secretary in Shabana Mahmood, who's definitely, certainly to the right of her previous incumbent colleague, Yvette Cooper, on this subject. So the question, one question is, will the Labour Party, will those backbenchers support such a move?
Well, it's a difficult one to tell. I think they probably will put up a bit of a stink. We saw that, of course, when Reform Party announced a slightly stronger policy when it comes to indefinite leave to remain, which was that they would just scrap the whole process, which I think actually is probably where we need to head. Of course, Keir Starmer was very adamant that such a proposal was racist, fascist, tearing up communities. And when it comes to actually trying to communicate the difference between what Reform are putting forward and the Labour Party are now putting forward, it will be probably a lot harder. And I think you will end up with the sort of rabid open border fanatics, the sort of Nadia Whittams of the Labour Party really crying foul, and we'll hear an endless procession of Labour individuals, no doubt, reading sort of testimonies from constituents and bleeding heart tales of how this is an absolutely evil thing to be even countenancing. But, we simply have to be frank about this. This is a system that, this is a process that could very well cost us hundreds of billions of pounds a year, hundreds of billions of pounds for the foreseeable future. We've already got 1.3 million foreign nationals claiming universal credit. If another 800,000 or so get settled status, that number could surge to close to 2 million. So I think we need to be very frank about this. We need level-headed conversation, not one driven by emotion. And unfortunately, the Labour Party aren't the best party to really be having those level-headed conversations. They're a party that really love to scream about human rights and abstract notions of fairness and justice and stuff. So I think you raise a good point that there probably will be a bit of a backlash.
Yes, and pathological suicidal empathy, which is what the leftist-inspired Open Borders is all about. And it's very important that you're being unfashionable politically, Robert, by calling out the madness of the Boris wave happening under the watch of a Conservative Prime Minister. Very sort of surprising and disappointing. Can I ask you, does this demonstrate how the national conversation has shifted very rapidly given that just the idea of reversing this indefinite leave to remain policy would have been extremely controversial a year or two ago. Now it's a mainstream idea being peddled by a Labour Home Secretary.
It's dizzyingly fast, the change that we're seeing. Even at the start of this year, when we were trying to have a conversation about indefinite leave to remain and even fiddling around at the margins with it, it was something that I think a lot of people didn't understand, just the sheer scale of the crisis that was looming, but also it really was a gate-kept conversation. It was, as I said, those ideas of, well, these individuals have, come to make a life for themselves here. We have to be perfectly fair and honour that, even if they are going to be a long-term cost. So the way the conversation is going really reflects just how fed up the British public are with this. We've now got the most popular immigration policy position amongst the population being actually a position of net negative migration, which would require more individuals leaving than entering the UK. And if we start changing ILR rules, then the hope would be that we will see an increase in emigration individuals at the end of their visa simply returning to their country of origin rather than putting down roots in the UK. So, look, this is a rapidly changing picture, actually, in terms of how we discuss this. And, who knows what we'll be talking about in 6 or so months' time.
Robert, what you do at the Centre of Migration Control, you're not anti-immigration. What you're doing is informing the public about the costs and potential consequences of it, particularly when it's too high. Keep up the important work. More power to you and have a good weekend. Robert Bates is the Research Director at the Centre of Migration Control. They're not anti-immigration. No one really is anti-immigration. If you've got half a brain cell, it's the fact that you look at the amount and who's coming in and are they going to be British and participate in our values, make a contribution, work, give something back, not arrive, live by different rules and claim benefits for the rest of their lives. Thank you for that. Your reaction, 0344 499 1000. That Dolan's dispatch is coming at 8 o'clock. It's about Trump's decision to sue the BBC for $5 billion. It's happening, folks. He's not happy with the apology. I'll be dealing with that at 8. You won't want to miss it. But next up, have ITV cancelled a Big Brother star for having the wrong political opinions? He'll answer live in the studio.
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out.
Don't need to increase taxes.
I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes.
I will not increase your national insurance. I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax.
We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean.
The economic circumstances have declined, deteriorated since a year ago. We are having to look at taxes and spending.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is 7:47. Donald Trump has decided he is going to sue the BBC. That is the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch in 10 minutes' time. You won't want to miss it. But with me in the studio now is a very talented young broadcaster with, I think, a big future in this industry. He's George Gilbert, who thought he'd won the lottery ticket by appearing in this year's Big Brother show on ITV, except that things went a little controversially wrong. He was thrown out of the Big Brother house for having the wrong opinions. And last night, he was not allowed to attend the live final, which normally contestants would be attending. And he joins us now. George Gilbert, welcome to Talk.
Thank you for having me, Mark. I'm happy to be here, and at least I've got a voice at Talk and not at ITV.
Yeah, you won't be thrown out of the Talk studio. Left, right, centre.
I'll hold you to that. Don't.
Well, of course, because the whole point is that we need the competition of ideas, and that's what I have on this show, which is that you call 03444991000 and you're on the left, you're on the right. I couldn't care less. Let's debate everything, and that's what we want to do.
With a show like Big Brother, you've got people left and right, and that's the best way to try and find solutions.
Of course it is.
If we all thought the same way, there would be no progress, no social discourse to find solutions to society's problems.
Well, this is it, and this is why, because the right do not have the monopoly of wisdom, and I mean, I've always thought that the great story of British history is the left versus right competing with each other for the best outcome, and you get the Tories in for a while, and then they start doing tax cuts for the rich and the public sector falls over, then Labour come in and do a bit of investing, but then they crash the economy, and sort of over 100 years you've sort of got a yin and a yang.
I know, it's cyclical, isn't it? It's cyclical. As soon as I think we're more of a conservative country by and large, and Labour only get in when the Conservatives mess things up.
Well, that's right, and Labour also, that's very true, and Labour only get in when they pretend to be conservative as well, such as Tony Blair, who said, actually, I'm not going to raise taxes, and I'm going to, make sure that we've got... And then that's exactly what Starmer and Reeves pretended, that they would be very moderate. Of course, I think that's been very different in office.
Oh, certainly. And they believe they can create some sort of socialist utopia. This never worked. Never will work. Well, and then they betray their manifesto. I believe, Mark, we should be able to sue political parties who lie to us, and if they say, they're going to do X, Y and Z in their manifesto and do complete opposite things, we should be able to sue them. It's ridiculous.
You raise a good point, because we are monitored by Ofcom here on Talk, not on YouTube, but on our radio output. And if I say something that's not true, I'll get, a ton of bricks thrown on me, and rightly so.
Yeah. Well, if people are watching this, hoping to hear some legitimate journalism, then Talk is the best place to go for that. But if you got political parties saying that they're going to provide the country with all of these public services and a lack of raised taxes and all things like that, and then they go and raise taxes and just betray what they've promised to do, then I wouldn't have voted for that party. And that's why we should sue them.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've been missold. Right? Well, here's a solution for you, because you're full of brilliant ideas. It could be a bit like the football. Are you a football fan?
Yeah, Man United for my sins.
All right, yeah. Well, you're picking
typical
up
southerner.
Yeah, that's it. Well, you know what? You guys are on the up a little bit now. And when somebody takes a penalty, if they take the penalty incorrectly, then the referee blows the whistles and says, you've got to take that again, right? We've seen that. So I think what you could do is, if a government that breached its manifesto promises, you could provoke another election, a second election, because of the promises that were broken. So when you were in the Big Brother house, I mean, the moment where you discovered that you were going to be on the show, you must have been very excited, because it's very competitive to get into the Big Brother house. Thousands of applications, and so what made you decide to apply?
Well, originally I didn't even want to go on the show, because I thought, if you do reality TV, you just look like you're cadging for fame, and it's quite it's not a very honourable way of becoming well known these days. And we all know what reality TV is like. I mean, I can tell you firsthand, if you get a bad edit, that could screw your life up. So,
as Donald Trump has discovered, if you edit things in a certain way, it can make you look like a good or a bad person.
Yeah, well, he's given me ideas. Maybe I should sue Big Brother for $5 billion.
Not a bad
shout.
shout.
Right out, yeah. But so I never actually wanted to do a show like Big Brother, but I've got loads of mates that said, "Oh, George, you'd be quality on reality television," and I've always gone, "No, shut up, not doing it." They chipped away at me for weeks and weeks and weeks, and eventually I gave in. I said, "All right, I'll apply. Nothing will come of it, but let's see what happens." And so I put my name in the hat. And this was actually last year I first applied, put my name in the hat, got right to the final stage, and then I didn't get it. But they did invite me onto the rehearsal house of Big Brother. Now, not a lot of people realise this is a thing, but it's basically a crew rehearsal to make sure all the sound works and all the lighting looks good, it's comfortable for the housemates. So I went and lived in the Big Brother house for about 4 days with 10 other people. And do you know what, Mark? I thoroughly enjoyed it. We had the full experience, just not the drawbacks of maybe fame and everything, because it wasn't televised. And I was so good in there. I was stoking a bit of debate, and I was a good housemate. I could tell I did well. And later on that year, I saw one of the crew, and they said, "George, I'm not meant to tell you this, but if you apply next year, I think you're going to get it."
Wow.
So I did, and I applied, and one thing led to another, and I got offered a place. And after, as you say, tens of thousands apply, it became an opportunity so prestigious I couldn't turn it down.
And what were these terrible opinions that saw you evicted from the house?
Oh, well, there's numerous. I was warned 4 times. So one of the first one that was televised was we were playing a game of spin the bottle, truth or dare, lands on me, and I picked truth. So I was asked to say something bad about each and every housemate, and this was the day before nominations day, so that bodes well. Got to a guy called there was a woman in there with a thick Northern Irish accent. I said, "I can't understand you, love." There's a guy in there quite loud. I said, "Yeah, settle down, mate." And then I got to a guy called Sam. He's a gay housemate, and I couldn't place a word on it at the time, so I just said, "Sam, you're very very yappy type of thing." I should have said flamboyant, but they went down the homophobic route because he was gay. But I've got many gay friends who aren't as camp as this person, and I didn't really have a problem, but I had to say something bad about him. Apparently he was bullied for that sort of thing in school, so it offended him. He started crying, and I was warned. But that's just it.
Right.
You can't say
so
boo to a goose these days.
A gay man is triggered because he's been called flamboyant.
Yeah, in a nutshell.
I mean, let's just, on the national television and radio airways, point out that a lot of gay men are flamboyant. It is a...
and it's not necessarily a bad thing.
It can be a fabulous... Well, my total hero is Elton John, probably the most famous gay man in the world.
Yeah.
A touch on the flamboyant side. And I'm not sure that Elton would be triggered by that. I mean, you have sort
embrace
of camp humour. I mean, it's a bit like saying if you had a guy there with a medallion and a hairy chest, you could call him macho, couldn't you?
Yeah, well, toxic masculinity would be the label these days.
So that's pretty crazy. So that was the first. That's where you blotted your copybook, and it went downhill from there. You were a marked man at that point, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'd already set my stall out, if you like, with regards to where I sit on the political spectrum. I'd said that if there was an election called today, I'd probably vote Reform. I'm not some hard-hitting Reform supporter. I just think they are the best party that has the best chance of reinstating a bit of hope into this country, because as we all know, the UK is probably nosediving right now by all metrics, whether it's infrastructure, the economy, the NHS, the education system. We're failing.
And our society is crumbling.
Oh, as I say, by all metrics, most certainly. And I think Reform have the best chance of bringing that to an end and actually doing something good with the hand that they'll be dealt. But so I set my stall out early on about who I'd vote for, and obviously that if you say you're a Reform voter on a show like Big Brother, hell hath no fury.
Which
off
is
with his head.
Very confusing, because more people voted Reform at the last election than the Liberal Democrats.
More ethnic minorities voted for Reform than the Lib Dems as well.
So
it's not racist.
Well, you prove my point, because I've been saying Reform will win the next election, and they'll do so on a multi-ethnic vote, so you've backed me up on that one.
Certainly,
And also, something I've argued, the Conservatives and Reform combined accrued 11.5 million votes at the last election, as opposed to Labour's 9.5 million. So actually the majority of those who voted were right-leaning.
Yeah.
Many of whom will have been viewers of Big Brother.
Yeah, yeah.
So your unfashionable, niche, extremist views are represented by millions.
Well, this is what I mentioned earlier. I think, by and large, we are a more conservative-leaning country. It's just conservatives aren't conservative, so the vote is split. You've got a lot of people, I've heard a lot of old people are sticking with the Conservative Party because that's all they've ever done. Fair enough, but actually they're not conservative. So I'd urge any Conservative voter to go and vote Reform, because at least they are, singing from that hymn sheet.
I mean, Reform are nothing more than really just a renaissance of the 80s Tories under Thatcher.
Yeah.
Order control, law and order, sensible economic management.
Small government, populists.
I mean, there's not too much of a cigarette paper you could put between Farage and Mrs Thatcher, really.
Yeah, and Thatcher, I'd say, was probably our best Prime Minister post-war, so that's a good thing.
Well, I would tend to agree with you, but not a good thing according to ITV, and you were not invited to the live final last night.
Correct.
You should have been there. Has this been upsetting for you? Has it been traumatic a little bit?
Well, do you know what, Mark? It's more the principle, the fact that I'm banned from returning to a show that I played a big part of. A lot of people said I was the best housemate, and if you look back on their social channels, all of the reels and videos and clips that they've posted, if they've contained my face in the thumbnail, they tend to do better. And that's because people enjoy watching debates, and that's what I was bringing to the table. But obviously, you can't do that in this day and age.
It's pretty wild.
It's upsetting.
But listen, ITV's loss is our gain, because I think you're going to do a lot of broadcasting in the months and years ahead, and you can't be cancelled now. You've got the antibodies.
Yeah, right? I suppose I do. I think, mate, I suppose every cloud has a silver lining. Everything happens for a reason. All those cliches.
Well, and also, if you'd just been a sort of polite housemate, you wouldn't be on this platform now. We wouldn't be talking about this.
True.
You'd have probably slipped into obscurity, I suspect.
Yeah.
Whereas now you've got a possible platform. Are you going to use that platform? Would you consider running for Reform UK actively?
Well, I didn't really want to get into politics this young. I'm 23 years old, and we all know politics is very toxic. It's sort of you've crossed the Rubicon once you go into politics. You can't come back and do something creative. So
yes.
But now I am associated with those political views. I don't think I've really got a choice, Mark. So it's written in the stars.
And what about a future in politics altogether? Can you imagine being in Parliament eventually?
Yeah, as I say, I think that is destined for me, and I want to make this country better. I'm a very proud Brit, and I do want to do good things. I think this country is not nearly doing as much as what we can be doing on all fronts. We need a revolution, really, and that's not me calling for a civil war like some people, Elon Musk. But you know what? If there was a civil war, at least we'd see major changes, because we bloody need them.
I tell you, stunning George, it's been a very lively conversation, and I want to keep you in the Talk Brother house rather than evict you from the Big Brother one. Really enjoyed your company, and you talked a lot of sense. And will you come back and see us again soon?
Catch me on YouTube, George Gilbert. That's what I'm going to be.
All right, so go to YouTube, and people can start subscribing to your channel.
Please do. I really appreciate that.
Okay, go to YouTube.
Thanks for having me on, Mark.
No, good. George Gilbert, YouTube. Go and search it. Next up, Dolan's Dispatch and Trump. Don't go anywhere.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Coming up to 3 minutes past 8. Top of the morning to you. I am Mark Dolan. This is Talk Breakfast and a big 2 hours to come. Breaking news this morning. The most powerful man in the world, Donald Trump, has confirmed he is going to proceed with his legal action against the BBC for up to $5 billion following the badly doctored Panorama clip, which misrepresented his speech on January the 6th, 2021. This is not a drill, folks. Trump is suing the BBC, and that figure of $5 billion could increase because it doesn't include the second flagship show on the BBC implicated in this, which of course is Newsnight, which featured a clip that changed what Donald Trump said on January the 6th, and which was called out by a former Trump advisor live on the Newsnight programme. Nothing was done. This is now a source of national embarrassment, and it's a national scandal. We'll bring reaction from across the political spectrum. But what's your view? Do you support Donald Trump's decision breaking this morning to proceed with his legal action to the tune of $5 billion? 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222. The new Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood is going to make the Boris wave of migrants, it's around 1.2 million people, wait 10 years before being able to claim benefits and apply for indefinite leave to remain. Is it too little too late? Will it work? Your reaction? Plus the front pages, so much to get through at 4 minutes past 8 on a Saturday morning. Your weekend starts here. Very, very excited about what's coming up, and it's all about your opinions. So give us a call now, 0344 499 1000. Is Trump right to be suing the BBC? And what are the consequences? Can the corporation change? Can they win your support? Or is the damage done? You can hear us on the radio on DAB+, and you can also watch us. Just head to YouTube, search Talk, and up we pop. And as the saying goes, let's talk. But as always, at this time on Talk Breakfast, it is Dolan's Dispatch. Why is Britain getting more leadership from the US president than our own Prime Minister? Earlier this year, Donald Trump came off a plane in Scotland, and he said, quite rightly, that if you don't stop mass legal and illegal immigration, you won't have a Britain anymore. That's what he said. He said, if you don't stop mass legal and illegal immigration, you won't have a Britain anymore. Why is the president saying that, Donald Trump, and not Sir Keir Starmer, the man who on paper is supposed to be fighting for our best interests? On that same visit to the United Kingdom, he expressed incredulity that we filled our countryside with windmills, the production of which require vast energy resources, windmills that blight our beautiful landscape, windmills whose energy can't be stored, and windmills that, when they don't spin, don't produce energy, and when they do spin too fast, they blow up. And in a TV interview in the last 24 hours, Mr. Trump criticised the government for blocking drilling in the North Sea, which he labelled one of the greatest energy fields in the world, with some of the best oil. If he were our Prime Minister, we would drill, baby, drill. Unfortunately, we are stuck with the cervix-free Sir Keir Starmer. Donald Trump said in an interview just in the last 24 hours, you have this huge asset sitting there talking about the oil, and you're destroying your country with windmills all over the place. And in that explosive interview, he returned to the immigration issue. He said that migrants from some of the worst places on earth were coming to Britain and destroying the country. He said, I've told some of the leaders of Europe, you've got to stop. Your immigration is going to destroy you if you get people from the wrong places. Well, we've seen the consequences of Britain's open border policy, and it's made us poorer, more divided, and less safe. Trump is right. He also called out the explosion in crime in our capital city of London, crime which is replicated across the UK, where he said that people are being stabbed in the ass or worse. That's what he said. He said, you're being stabbed in the ass. Well, I don't know about that language. I will say the law is an ass, isn't it? Because we don't police these people properly and we don't prosecute them either. And now, the leader of the free world has taken it upon himself to hold our national state broadcaster, the BBC, to account, with the extraordinary development that after the Beeb's mealy-mouthed non-apology, which sought to gaslight the president by claiming the bad edit on Panorama was unintentional, well, he wants revenge. That pathetic excuse of an apology, which represented the sheer lack of contrition on the part of the BBC, who have created a diplomatic incident, means that a furious Donald Trump is now going to sue the corporation for up to $5 billion. Good. And let me tell you, that number could grow because his legal action doesn't relate to the Newsnight episode in which a similar doctored clip was broadcast 2 years before Panorama, and an episode of Newsnight in which a former Trump top advisor called out the bad edit live on air. Nothing was done at the time, and nothing was done following that broadcast. And the thing is, $5 billion, it won't take that long to pay such a bill. Just sack all of the middle managers on six-figure salaries. And sack the big stars, needlessly overpaid on the radio and on TV, who would never command such fees in the private sector. Donald Trump's legal action is good news because it will expose the insidious leftist progressivism which now underpins and permeates the BBC's output. And I don't just mean news and current affairs, where a memo from the heroic Michael Prescott, someone advising the BBC on journalistic standards, revealed that 30 leading professors from Oxford, Cambridge and elsewhere warned the corporation that they were rewriting British history through a woke lens. Those concerns were ignored. The same memo revealed a disproportionately pro-trans message in many of the BBC's programmes, with gender-critical people, those are people that think there are two sexes, being silenced. This goes beyond the news output that saw the BBC risk the lives of Jewish people with a pro-Hamas, anti-Israel slant in the course of the Gaza war. And by the way, the BBC still won't call Hamas terrorists, even though it's in the charter of Hamas to kill all Jews. Now, this is about all of the BBC's output, which is just consumed with leftist groupthink and ideology. It's not just news and current affairs, it's the dramas, the woke storylines in Doctor Who, the right-on politically correct music programmes, and the horribly woke comedies, and even some of the sports coverage as well. Donald Trump has once again demonstrated the leadership that we so urgently need in this country. Why is he fighting for Britain and not Sir Keir Starmer? How ironic that it takes an orange-faced world leader to hold our national state broadcaster to account. Good luck with your lawsuit, Donald Trump. Perhaps you can make the BBC great again. 0344 499 1000, your reaction, Donald Trump to sue the BBC for $5 billion. Steve is in Leeds. Hello, Steve.
Morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well. How are things in West Yorkshire this morning?
Wet and miserable, but that's Yorkshire for you.
All right. Well, listen, you sound quite sunny in your disposition. Has this lawsuit put a smile on your face?
Well, I agree with what he's doing, but effectively, he's suing the British government because it's government money that runs the BBC. It's the taxpayer that will pay the $5 billion. Now, if I was in that position, what is Sir Keir Starmer and the Chancellor saying about this? Because if that $5 billion comes down the line, we haven't got a $20 billion black hole, we've got a $25 billion black hole. So she factored that into a budget. Sir Keir Starmer's running the country, runs the BBC. What is he saying about it?
Well, you're absolutely right.
But nothing.
And you raise a good point, and some people are worried about the money side of it if Donald Trump is successful. But that is actually the BBC's budget, so they would have to pay that. And I think what they can do is they can sack a load of people and they can arrange for a direct debit to go to Donald Trump, and they can do it slowly. So maybe it's, £1 million or £2 million a month for the next 5 years. And I know, I promise you, Steve, I've worked at the BBC. I know how they operate. They've got so many layers of management. The staff are overpaid. That money can be found.
Well, the thing is, Mark, think about this. What happens if this expands? What happens if the Israeli government decide to sue the BBC? Over the false media reports about
put ideas in my head. Let's text Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah, this could open the floodgates to a lot of different people, countries, suing the BBC. Because if they see Donald Trump do it and it's successful, hey, why don't we do it?
But Steve, what's the problem? What's the problem if the BBC have lied and essentially peddled propaganda? What's the problem with them being sued? Because if I lie, I think I should be sued.
Well, the thing is, it's back to that the culpability falls on the taxpayer, not on the people who've done it. As you earlier, the police guy came in earlier and said, this is misconduct in a public office. The BBC has a charter in law that says it must be representative of all views. It can't be biased. Well, that means that everybody at the BBC who's been biased has failed, and there should be some responsibility for these things. We constantly see people getting away, politicians, civil servants, they cock it up, they make a mess, they walk away with a gold-plated pension, as I'm sure the guy in the BBC who's just resigned would walk away with a gold-plated pension
millions,
and a massive payoff. So thank you very much. I've messed up the BBC, an organisation that had a worldwide reputation. I've just trashed it. Thanks a lot. I'll go on and work for some other media company now. He should be banned from working in media, not only sacked, but banned from working for any other media company, yeah? And for the next 10 years. So he can't profit from the fact that he's been the head of the BBC, because he'll get employed by somebody else on a massive salary, and it's us, the taxpayer, once again, that fund these cock-ups. And it's systemic throughout the BBC.
I'm really glad you mentioned that.
Sacked.
You listen, Steve, you're so right. And let me say that we must not be on the hook for any bill if Donald Trump is successful. You are so right about that, because we had to pay for the post office scandal and, the infected blood. And there's just so much incompetence institutionally we've had over many years. The NHS, Steve, they write a cheque for many millions every year for medical negligence. So you are right. The buck should not stop with us. We shouldn't pay the bill. But, Steve, I don't think we should. And I think the BBC have got their budget. And I think that the settlement with Trump will come out of that. And you don't need these well-paid stars. Steve, call me again, because you dropped some important truth bombs there. Really enjoyed that. Jeff's in Hastings. Good morning, Jeff.
Oh, hello, Mark. I'm talking about the Donald Trump suing the BBC. I believe that it's the right thing to do. As I said to your lady on the phone there, you've got to lead by example. I think Donald Trump has got it absolutely right with the European warning about the takeover, if you like.
Yeah. You won't, if you don't stop mass immigration, you won't have a Europe anymore.
Well, that's right. Basically, that's it. And I mean, he is a great leader. I believe in him so much. And the British people should not have to pay the BBC's fine to him, which I hope he gets. There was a hint this morning of hope in your show, the temporary and or the permanent stay for the immigrants. The fact is, we know what permanent means as a time scale.
Yeah.
But as far as temporary is concerned, we don't know how long temporary could be. It could be 10, 15, 20 years. So they need to establish what temporary means, 1 year, 2 years or 3 years.
Yes, we really need the devil in the detail on that one and the terms and conditions, don't we, Jeff? Before I let you go, Jeff, appreciate your thoughts as well. I'm glad that Donald Trump's doing this. Sharon agrees. She said it serves the BBC right. Similarly, Peter has texted in, "Good morning, guys. So glad Donald Trump's suing the BBC. You're right, it's not about the money. It's the illegality and election interference. Our man in Washington is doing the British public a service by showing up the BBC for who they really are and to make fundamental changes. God bless President Trump." So my final question to you, Jeff, is can the BBC change?
I think they can, but as you've probably established, you need to have a good clear out there and get some honest, not just necessarily English people working in there, but just honest people, wherever they come from. I think the BBC do need to change very drastically. The BBC, I've always found them all right, but lately with the news that's coming on, I just think that, they're going downhill. And I don't know much about politics, but I do worry a bit about who's on whose side in this country in all sections of, the industry of politics and parliament. Now, they said something about Keir Starmer should be dealing with it, but I don't know. They're all in the same mix, and they're passing the problem over to each other. Maybe I'm getting it all wrong. I don't know, Mark, but I see things in my own way, as the people listening do. There's got to be a change. You've got to put your foot down in this country and stop the nonsense that's going on, because I was very surprised about the fact that you said there are more Muslims in the country than there are people in Wales. I mean, that is quite frightening, to be honest with you.
And Jeff, why would you say that's frightening?
Because I believe there is I may get condemned for this, but I believe there will be a takeover bid of the whole country, and we need to put the barriers up now very quickly.
You just feel your concern is that what you want to do is preserve the fundamental values of this country, and you see that could change if the demographics of Britain change.
Yeah, I mean, put a restriction on it, keep it, like controlled. But, I go to Wales a lot. I love the place. It's beautiful. And I see lots of lovely kids there. And I think, I don't want these kids ruined and made to be something they're not. I love the English kids. They're beautiful. They're mum and dads. I was on a little train in somewhere, I can't Bala or somewhere in Wales. And the people wave at you as they're walking by, as your train's going by. And the little baby boy was waving at us, and I waved my dog's paw. And the little kid turned to his mum and said, "Mum, that doggy waved at me." This is what I want to see in England, not all the complications that are being brought in. Just keep it British and keep our values. And if people come in, to work and that's fine. I don't have a problem with anyone in the world, wherever they come from, their ethnicity.
It's not about skin colour, is it, Jeff? It's about British values.
It's about coming over here, acting sensible, getting your, what they call it, your nose to the grindstone, and do an honest day's work, and you will gain a lot of respect from the English people. I meet a lot of people from other countries, and they're absolutely lovely. But, we've got so many naughty people coming into the country, and that's the ones they have to concentrate on. Let anyone come in who's working, who wants to build up the country, and that's fine with me. I'll get on with anyone, really. But I don't want, as they said, the criminals coming in and disrupting our way of life, Mark.
Or people that exist in a parallel community, not speaking the language, not sharing in the culture, sometimes not following the law. I mean, we've got an ITV presenter in Adil Ray who believes that Sharia law would be quite a good thing for this country, which is at odds with our criminal justice system. Jeff, before you go, just briefly, some would argue, just devil's advocate, that, your concerns about Britain becoming a majority Muslim country, or a takeover, as you call it, they would say that's Islamophobic. What say you to that, Jeff?
Well, they would say that, because it's like your guy today with the British flag on the licence. This is England. It only says that this is a British printed licence, it shows that it's from England and nowhere else.
Yeah.
But it's not about countries and who's who and whatnot. I mean, a lot of it is they are coming into this area of picking at little things, you know, like you're flying your flag. You know, as someone said the other week on the show, you're at football, England against Germany, say, English flags are flying. It doesn't mean you're against the Germans. It means you're supporting your country.
Amen.
You know?
Jeff, I'll tell you something, you're on fire this morning. You've talked a lot of sense, and I really appreciated your call. Will you call me again soon?
Yeah, could I just say one thing, Mark?
Of course.
To all the people of England, there is a guy called Jeff from Hastings who loves you all very much, and I am on your side, all right? I'm on your side. I am there.
Jeff, I echo that sentiment, and thank you for sharing that with my army of viewers and listeners, and we'll catch up again soon. Have a good weekend, Jeff. Catch up soon and enjoy your time with your family. Jeff in Hastings there with strong views about Trump's decision to sue the BBC for $5 billion. More on this next.
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out.
Don't need to increase taxes. I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes.
I will not increase your national insurance. I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax.
We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean. The economic circumstances have declined, deteriorated since a year ago. We are having to look at taxes and spending.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
8:28, Mark Dolan on Talk Breakfast. Lovely to have your company. The switchboard is full, as is the message board, with the breaking news that Donald Trump is going to proceed with his legal action against the BBC for $5 billion, or up to that figure. Of course, that number could grow if the Newsnight doctoring of a video is included in his legal action. At the moment, he's looking for up to $5 billion in relation to the Panorama clip, so things could get worse for the corporation. Do you support Donald Trump's move? Well, how about this from Neil, who says, Mark, how can the BBC change when the people making these programmes never get sacked? It's always the top brass that goes. Sharon says, people who want to watch the BBC can pay for it. If you don't watch the Beeb, then you do not pay for it, and that's what needs to happen. Good morning, Mark. I lost all faith in the BBC, said Steve, in 2020 and 2021. I've never trusted or watched them since. As for being allowed to mark their own homework when everyone else gets adjudicated by Ofcom, that in itself is suspect. Go Trump, says Steve. Well, I'm delighted to say that reacting to the big stories of the day, in the studio is the broadcaster and political commentator Andy Williams. Good morning, Andy.
Good morning to you.
And listen, we thought it would be a slow news day, but now you've got our national state broadcaster being sued by the most powerful man in the world, leader of the free world, Donald Trump. Your reaction?
Well, I mean, it's serious stuff. It's a nightmare scenario for the BBC to face having to spend public money defending a lawsuit against the most powerful man in the world, and somebody who, let's be clear, is a massive bully. I mean, this is just classic Trump playbook, isn't it? You know, you don't like someone or something or the way someone behaves, and you try and just drill them into the ground. And I don't think
like it when someone lies about you.
Well, look, let's just be clear about what's happened here. Of course, that Panorama clip that was edited in a way that made it look like he said something he did say, but at different times that changed the meaning of what he said, that was a really bad mistake. And what more do you want? The top two people in the organisation have resigned, so they've taken accountability. They obviously weren't there overseeing the edit, but you know, if you're at the top of an organisation, you have to take responsibility, and they've fallen on their swords, so that's fine. But to pluck a number like 5 billion out of the air, I mean, that would bankrupt the BBC, right? If he, and by the way,
5 billion is their income in just 1 year.
Yeah, so that would bankrupt
nice work
them.
If you can get it.
It would bankrupt them.
Nah, because what they can do is they can organise.
They don't have 5 billion quid sitting in an account.
I'll negotiate it. I'm friendly with the White House, and I'll adjudicate between the two parties, and there will be a direct debit, and it'll perhaps be
over how many years?
I reckon maybe $1 million a week.
Right, okay.
Which all you got to do is sack a few Radio 2 presenters.
That's 5,000 weeks.
A couple of people on Strictly. Okay. I mean, you've got Gary Lineker, who was on 1.3 million just to read out football results.
But hang on, but Mark, this is where the BBC needs to be better at defending himself. Nobody's saying that 1.3 million a year isn't a huge amount of money. Obviously it is. However, you know as well as I do that in the commercial sector, there are people who are, people at ITV, Anton Deck, for example, people at Sky, who are earning way more than £1.3 million a year to present massive TV programmes. So the BBC has to cut its cloth accordingly.
Well, I think the host of for example, Match of the Day, I think the fee for that should be £50,000.
Why?
Because it's an amazing platform. You'll get a load of corporate work off the back of it. It'll make you famous. Eventually there'll be an autobiography. You'll do other shows. Other broadcasters will come in for you because of the profile of being on the BBC and on Match of the Day. Plus, £50,000 is a lot of money to read out football results and to say to Alan Shearer, isn't Harry Kane good at scoring goals?
You could say that.
I mean, I could do that, and I think I'd be very good at it, and I think the ratings would go up. You could be my sidekick.
I would watch you doing Match of the Day.
Do you know anything about the offside rule?
I do. I'm a big football fan.
All right, let's make a pitch. I'll speak to the boss.
I can do the football bit and you can do the other stuff. No, I think, look, in all seriousness, the BBC's got itself into a right mess because for a very long time it's failed to defend its really important position in British society and in national life. This is still the world's most trusted broadcaster. And if you think about the breadth of its output and the impact of its output, I think it's a really important cultural institution. And, you know, some listeners might say, well, I've lost trust in it and I've stopped listening to it. And that's fine. You can watch Netflix and you can listen to Talk and you can go and watch other channels. That's your right.
Well, I don't believe in cancel culture and I don't want to shut it down. I think that we've invested in it for decades and therefore we own the IP, the intellectual property of the BBC. So it would be ridiculous. It has enormous soft diplomatic power.
Of course it does.
I think there are elements of, you know, the BBC News Channel, the World Service. I think it does some great stuff, sports coverage, no problem. Comedies, yes, but certainly back in the day, The Office, Only Fools. It's a remarkable brand, but it's in crisis. The issue is that the public don't trust it anymore, and to do that edit on Donald Trump's speech confirms the deepest suspicions of my viewers and listeners, some of them at least, that the BBC has a leftist slant. And you used that word mistake about the Panorama edit. It wasn't a mistake. Okay, a mistake is when for some reason you've got a bit of Trump talking and then suddenly there's a German Shepherd Alsatian jumping into a swimming pool. That's a mistake, right? This was not. This was the clipping of two parts of a speech together, which gave the impression that he ordered people to go to the Capitol and to be violent.
Well, I mean,
Do you retract the word mistake?
No, I don't. I mean, let's be absolutely clear. Donald Trump did incite what happened on January the 6th. He absolutely wanted that to happen.
He said, go patriotically and peacefully. It was actually a very healing, soothing speech, I thought.
Yeah, according to him. And he said the other day it was a beautiful speech, which is one way of putting it. I mean, if Donald Trump hadn't spent the last 5 years lying about the result of the 2020 general election, which, let's be clear and put the conspiracy theories to one side, he lost. He factually lost that election.
Is it unfortunate that Hillary Clinton objected to the result of the 2016 election under similar circumstances?
She didn't object to the outcome of it. She objected to the way in which it was conducted. And of course, she was devastated to lose it to someone like Donald Trump. But Hillary Clinton doesn't say today, I actually won the 2016 election. She doesn't say that. Donald Trump believes, or at least he says, that he won the 2020 election. And if the people who were there at the Capitol on that day were there because they thought they were following his orders. Now, I'm not saying that Trump wanted Mike Pence to be hanged, as some of the people who went into the Capitol were calling for, but he absolutely played a part in whipping up what happened on that day. Now, I accept that the edit, the way the BBC edited that footage, was wrong. Of course it was. But
Do you retract that it was a mistake?
No,
it wasn't a mistake.
Well, okay.
It was actually it was actually a brilliant edit. It was a great piece of editing. It was just it was misinformation. It was elegantly done. In fact, it was such a good edit, it looked like one sentence, which it was not, and that's not a mistake.
That is a mistake.
How can it be a mistake? Or do you mean an error of judgment?
So let's step back a minute. So we actually don't know what was in the mind of the producer who did that. Now,
no, but isn't it funny how it made
case,
Donald Trump look bad? I wonder what was in their mind if it made the Orange Man look bad.
But hang on a minute. You know, it didn't actually fundamentally change what he was trying to achieve.
And isn't that the problem with the BBC's approach? Because there's a case to be made that Trump's actions on that day were wrong. Mick Mulvaney, who's a good friend of mine, former chief of staff, resigned from the administration as a result of what happened that day.
Rightly so.
So there are plenty on the right that weren't happy with Jan 6. But this further undermines the BBC, that they could have made a documentary that, you know, cast doubt on the judgment of Donald Trump that day without lying. And what they've done is lost the moral high ground with that edit. And it happened not just once but twice. The Newsnight programme 2 years previously.
But how can
this
we know?
Systemic.
How can we know?
Rotten to the core.
How can we know that we don't know what the motivations of the individual who oversaw that edit were?
Individuals.
We just don't know.
It's more than one. But the reason why is because it's rife within the organisation. They are consumed with Trump derangement syndrome. Don't forget the memo from Michael Prescott, who's there to advise the BBC, an experienced journalist himself, who said, listen, you know, you're rewriting British history through a woke lens. You've got a pro-trans narrative with gender-critical feminists being silenced, and you won't call Hamas terrorists, and you're pro-Hamas in the Gaza war.
All of the examples that memo cited were about perceived bias or a lack of impartiality from one political perspective. There was nothing about...
No, this guy was there to advise the BBC on their standards, and he's a very accomplished guy.
He is, and he's very...
You don't want him suing you for $5 billion by calling him some raging right-winger or calling this a right-wing conspiracy. It ain't.
I'll tell you where the BBC has failed. It's failed to defend its very important role in national life. And I think there's a parallel here with the run-up to the Brexit referendum. You know, for years and years, successive governments failed to make the case that while there are all sorts of things that are wrong with the European Union and, you know, you wouldn't design it in the way it's organised, actually fundamentally, on balance, it's a force for good. And the BBC should have been doing the same over the last 20 years and saying, we accept we're not perfect, but here are the reasons why we are an absolutely indispensable part of British culture. And they're not doing that. And actually, I think the person within the BBC at a leadership level who has failed the most egregiously over the last few weeks is the chair, Salma Shah, because he has not stepped in and been decisive enough to give that robust defence.
Well, you're talking about defence. I think the BBC has defended itself for too long now. It's in denial about the leftist grip that its journalists are under. But it's all about opinions. Loving having Andy in the studio. And Andy and I are going to be taking your calls between now and 9 o'clock. If you don't agree with Andy, give us a call. And if you do agree with him, give us a call as well. 03444991000. Sean says, good morning, Mark. I'm 100% behind Trump suing the BBC. They've deliberately fabricated a downright lie. And it's not the only time, just typical of the extreme left. Scrap the licence fee and make them compete on the open market and watch them close down. Nobody likes them. ITV and Sky are no better, says Sean. And we'll get to more of that, more of your thoughts on this briefly. Just from Sarah, who says, good morning, Mark. How is what the BBC have done any different from celebrity phone hacking? And look at the huge fuss over that. So why not this? I hope Trump brings the BBC down. Loving the show. Excellent as usual. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for that. And Alan in Middlesbrough. Good morning, Mark. A new broom sweeps clean. The BBC will not change until a new government with a different ideology is in office. We know Ofcom is ineffective and play with the same loaded dice. Very elegantly put. Well, look, it's all about your opinions, your calls, and myself with Andy Williams in the studio next. Don't go anywhere.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
8:42 Talk Breakfast, and Donald Trump has decided to pursue his legal action against the BBC. That is breaking news. And he's looking for up to $5 billion in damages. Reacting to this, the brilliant political commentator Andy Williams, who is taking a bullet for the BBC this morning. But what do you think? Rajit is in Harrow. Good morning, Rajit. Yeah. Welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Good morning, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.
I just wanted to say that I think that this is a relatively trivial issue. We could have taken it seriously if he had stuck at $1 billion, but now he's upped it to $5 billion, and the BBC is the softest target you can pick. And you know, America does have this thing called the First Amendment, which allows for some flexibility in expression. So clearly, it's a warning for the BBC. But I think that there are far more important things where we need Donald Trump to intervene and not destroying the BBC, which has provided useful service in the past. For example, the Chagos Archipelago, the Chinese embassy,
yes,
the spying story. These
yes,
things are incredibly more damaging to the American reputation for years to come than whatever the BBC might have done in the past, which I don't even watch the BBC anymore. I mean, that's how I protest. If I don't like whatever the BBC is doing, I avoid it as much as I can, although I'm not unhappy to be a license payer. So I just think that there are far more important places where we need Donald Trump to intervene, and our government is our worst enemy, not the BBC.
Can't he do all of those things, though? Can't he call out the madness of the Chagos Islands
sell-off? Well, he hasn't done that so far, and that's what I find slightly disappointing.
You're right. He's been weak on Chagos. He's been weak on Chagos, hasn't he?
Yeah, because it's going to cost the British taxpayer far more. I mean, it's going to cost us $50 billion or whatever over the long term, and it's just an incredible mess, international mess that we're getting into because of things like that.
I completely agree with you, and it's also strategically very sensitive,
yes,
militarily.
Rajit, and environmentally. Environmentally, it's incredibly important.
Interesting. Now, Rajit, why don't you listen to the BBC anymore?
Well, I do watch it once in a while, especially iPlayer. But basically, when it comes to things like the Chagos Archipelago or things that really concern me about British interests, they're always twisting the dagger on things that are, things that should enhance the British culture.
Rajit,
they're always twisting it.
What do you think about Donald Trump's comments that we need to end mass immigration, otherwise we won't have a Britain anymore? What's your view on that?
Well, I think that the fact that he's making these signs is very important, and I think it's a warning sign to the government. I mean, we've got a cabinet, each and every one who has been holding placards saying refugees welcome.
And what do you think of that?
Well, I agree with Donald Trump's stance on many of these things, but I just think that he's showing that he's got a gigantic ego if he thinks he can get £5 billion out of the BBC.
Rajit, I think it's the first time we spoke, first of many. Please call me again soon. Enjoyed your call. Rajit in Harrow there, who agrees with a lot of Trump's positions, Andy Williams, but thinks that the BBC story is a bit of a sideshow.
Yeah, and it could be part of a dead cat strategy from Donald Trump, because let's be clear, he is really unpopular at home in the United States. He obviously has that very, very hardcore, passionate MAGA support and always will. But if you look at the polls in America, it's not looking great for him. He's on course to get absolutely thrashed this time next year at the midterms. The economy is not doing nearly as well as he said it would. Inflation is running high. Now, our economy is not doing particularly well either, but I'm talking about Trump and the United States. He's always deflecting and distracting from the real issues, and on those issues, he's not performing as he said he would.
Paul is in Brighton. Good morning, Paul. Welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Hello, Mark.
What do you think about Trump? He's going to sue the BBC for up to $5 billion. Do you support this action?
Yes, I do. I agree with the last caller. There are some more important things to be worried about in the world today. But the BBC, what they did to him was totally wrong, and they knew exactly what they were doing. I can just imagine their schoolboy student politics in the editorial room when they were putting that all together, thinking it was a jolly jape. And it's not right that they do this. So I would like to see him bankrupt the BBC, and then people like Tim Davie will not receive their gold-plated pensions for what they did was so wrong.
Paul, can the BBC be fixed? Can you change the management and the culture within the organisation so that folk like your good self will switch it on in the morning, watch it, and actually believe what you're seeing?
Well, I do admit to watching the BBC News, but the reason I do that is because I don't want to watch ITV, which has hideous people like Ed Balls and Alistair Campbell presenting, but that's another story. So I do watch the BBC News, but it's so obvious that they are not impartial and they have their own political agenda. Whether that can be changed, who knows? But I think it's endemic throughout the BBC, unfortunately.
I mean, Paul, stay with us if you can. Paul there, I think, reading between the lines, Andy, feels that the BBC is beyond repair, really. Surely, if you're passionate about the corporation, you would want it to address the perceived left-wing bias that it has, the metropolitan mentality, you know, open borders, pro-net zero, pro-trans, anti-Trump.
I think it needs to defend its position. I think we have to be clear that if you look at the breadth of the BBC's output, it has 8 radio channels, plus 40 local radio stations, plus 6 TV. You know, they're doing a lot of stuff.
But you're not convincing. You're not convincing Paul, and you're not.
Paul's
convincing...
still watching BBC News as he says. And lots of this is the thing. 11 million people watched the Celebrity Traitors final last week. A lot of people are still watching the BBC. So the idea that everybody is sick of it and everybody has lost faith is just not true.
But I'm a bit worried.
It remains the most trusted broadcaster in the world.
Okay, but you keep saying that, but less trusted. It's a bit like when the Tories say, "Oh, we're the most successful political party in the history of European democracy."
Yeah, fair enough.
It's like, I get you. But you know, the credibility is slipping, and I think if you're serious and passionate about the BBC's future, then I think you need to acknowledge that. And I think you're not acknowledging a perceived left-wing bias within not just the news and current affairs output, but across comedy, drama, and beyond.
Well, look, perception is reality. I work in communications and PR, so if there is a groundswell of opinion that the BBC has a particular slant, then of course that has to be addressed. That's why.
Do you think it does?
Overall, no, I actually don't.
What about specifically?
I think they fall out of. I think they go out of their way. I think they fall over themselves to be impartial.
Why was there a script then that contained the expression "pregnant people" that a newsreader had to contradict?
Yeah, but look, of course, you know, this is my point. You can draw on a ton of isolated incidents where there are things that happen that aren't ideal, where there are mistakes, where there are allegations of bias. But I think fundamentally, you have to. No one organisation of the BBC size is perfect, right? And if you look at the overall breadth of their contribution and their output, I think it's mad not to defend it. And trust me, you know, careful what you wish for. If the BBC disappeared tomorrow, there would be a gaping hole in Britain that would not be filled by anyone else because there's no commercial imperative to do.
Well, I definitely don't want to axe the BBC, but I don't want it to defend itself, actually. I want it to self-reflect and change. Could that happen? 03444991000. Richard's in Leicester. Mark, he wants a message for you, actually. He calls you Mr. Williams, which I think...
It's very polite.
I think it means you're in trouble. Mr. Williams, my family live out in America, and it's getting better and better under Trump. But like the UK, they still have democratic woke crap. Andy, stop lying, says Richard. Mark... your guest says it was a mistake doctoring Trump's speech, just like when the BBC accidentally fabricated bank statements to con Princess Diana to talk about Prince Charles.
But hang on. That really was bad. But that was Martin Bashir. That wasn't the BBC. That was a journalist.
Someone working for the BBC. Yes. But unbiased my backside, says Kevin in East Sussex. And it's more of your messages and calls next.
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out.
Don't need to increase taxes.
I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes.
I will not increase your national insurance. I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax.
We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean.
The economic circumstances have declined, deteriorated since a year ago. We are having to look at taxes and spending.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi, Mark and Andy. Loving the show. I just wanted to say about the BBC. Andy, God love him. I know he loves the BBC and he says that they're not biased. Well, listen, I disagree. Can I just cite climate emergency as an example? They never give a balanced view on climate change. It's as though the science, sorry, the words have slipped around, as though the science is settled, and science is never settled. Amanda in East Yorkshire. Amanda, thank you so much for that. Listen, we'll get to more of your calls and texts on Donald Trump suing the BBC for $5 billion, which is today's breaking news. But we've got more breaking news, which is Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, is set to make a major announcement on Monday in regard to immigration. The Boris wave of migrants, which is around 1.6 million people, will face a 10-year ban on claiming benefits, and they'll also have to wait a decade before being able to successfully apply for indefinite leave to remain. This, Andy, would have been politically controversial a year ago. Yep. Now it's being rolled out by a Labour Home Secretary.
I know. I mean, it's an amazing shift. And actually, if you look at the reshuffle, the government reshuffle earlier this year, I think it was in September, that entire reshuffle was built around getting Shabana Mahmood into the Home Office because Keir Starmer knew that she was somebody who's going to take more firm action and get a grip on the situation. Now, for people who don't like Labour's record on this, Labour have deported and removed almost 50,000 people since they were elected. That's 23% up on the equivalent period before they were elected. So they have made a massive step change. And in terms of small boats, we know those numbers are going up, but it's a really difficult problem to solve. Nobody said it was going to be solved immediately. And I think they're starting to turn the tide, if you pardon my pun.
Will Labour backbenchers support this move by Shabana Mahmood? Because I'm sure there are plenty, like Nadia Whittome and others, who consider this to be a racist policy.
I'm sure there are. I mean, Nadia Whittome is just not serious, is she? Like, you know, the people on the far left of the Labour Party, the only way this government is not going to eat itself is by ignoring a bunch of the people on the hard left of the Labour Party, because they're always going to behave in one way. They're always going to say we have unlimited money to spend on everything and that we should have an unlimited open door migration policy. So people like her and people like Zara Sultana, who's obviously left the Labour Party, just ignore them and bulldoze through. And I think Labour's taking really strong action.
And do you support it? I mean, do you think this is a step in the right direction? Because I certainly spoke to a political expert just 2 days ago who said that if Labour can stop the boats, they're back in the game politically.
Well, I think that's absolutely true. Will they stop the boats? I don't think so, because I think completely stopping the boats is a fantasy. I don't think Reform are going to do that either.
Nigel will have it done within, I believe, 3 days.
Is that right? Okay.
And he's on record as saying that on Sky News.
He's on record as saying lots of things. I don't think it means he's on record as saying that Brexit was going to grow our economy and be a massive opportunity, and it hasn't been, has it? So,
well, it's been poorly executed. That's why we've got the freedoms.
If only Nigel had been at the levers and the controls, everything would have been fine.
Well, we'd have more trade deals, and we wouldn't have the alignment with Europe, which makes it more difficult to strike deals with India and the United States. We
wouldn't have the silly false trade deals that Liz Truss went around the world signing for Instagram purposes. But look, we have to have a really serious argument. If you support Labour government, which I broadly do, despite their many, many flaws, we have to make a serious argument against the alternative, which is Reform. And Reform would send women and children back to Sudan, and Afghanistan and Eritrea, where they might be tortured, raped or killed. And if you're okay with that, because if your view is, well, not my problem, Gov, crack on, that's your view. But let's be absolutely clear about what you're voting for if you're voting for reform. Labour is trying to strike the right balance between controlling our borders but also being ethical.
Well, I think Reform's policy is that you end people that are economic migrants from coming into the country so that people that do need asylum can jump to the front of the queue, which was the purpose of the asylum process originally, and it looks like it's been gerrymandered and abused by lawyers and gangsters who charge a lot of money for those crossings. But it's all about opinions. Barry, good morning, Mark. Andy obviously doesn't watch Question Time. Totally biased. A hand-picked audience and a disgraceful left-wing presenter in Fiona Bruce. Lorraine says Shabana Mahmood is no different to the rest of Labour. I'm having a bit of trouble with my technology. It's jumping around today.
Can I say something about Question Time?
Yeah, jump in while I fix this.
The last 9 episodes of Question Time, on 5 of those 9 episodes, there has been a Reform MP or representative. So that's 55% of the last 9 episodes,
It's
right?
not really enough considering they're ahead in the polls.
Well, another way of looking at it is they have 5 MPs. Right? Now, of course they should be represented because they're leading in the polls and they should be there regularly. They're there all the time. So, Question Time, you know, right-wing bias, left-wing bias, the answer is it depends on how you look at it.
Brilliant stuff. Listen, it's all about opinions. Eric says, I'm sorry, Andy is so out of touch and an obvious member of the Trump Derangement Society group. Yeah. Listen, really enjoyed your company.
Thanks,
and talked a lot of sense. Do come back and see us again soon. Andy Williams there, political commentator and broadcaster. Next up, more on Trump suing the BBC.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a happy Saturday, one and all. It is 3 minutes past 9. I'm Mark Dolan. This is Talk Breakfast. Your weekend starts here. And breaking news this morning. The most powerful man in the world, Donald Trump, has confirmed he's going to sue the BBC for up to $5 billion. You heard me right, following the badly doctored Panorama clip, which misrepresented his speech on January the 6th, 2021. A furious president plans to exact revenge from the corporation after what he saw as a mealy-mouthed non-apology. We'll get reaction from across the political spectrum. This is a story with global and diplomatic implications. America is our #1 economic, military and political ally, and it's now officially at war with our national state broadcaster. So given it's a war, whose side are you on? Do you back Donald Trump and his move against the BBC? Will it expose institutional bias? Or could it bankrupt a much-loved national corporation? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Drop us a voice note if you're busy. It's great to have your company. As the saying goes, let's talk. An interesting message from Leslie. Good morning, Leslie. Mark, I'm so sick of people defending Donald Trump. I detest the BBC and cancelled my licence fee a long time ago, but has everyone completely forgotten about Trump's crimes? He was impeached for inciting violence. He's defrauded people. He's told damaging lies about people, not to mention his connection to Epstein, which he's trying to cover up. Anyone who defends this should be ashamed. Leslie, thank you for that. It's all about opinions. Keep yours coming. Delighted to say with me in the studio is the political editor of The Sun on Sunday, Kate Ferguson. Good morning, Kate.
Good morning.
And there was me expecting a bit of a quiet news day. Right? I thought I'd come on air at 6 o'clock with a cup of tea and just graze through the papers and a bit of politics, a bit of sport. And it turns out the most famous and powerful man in the world, leader of the free world, is suing our national state broadcaster for $5 billion big ones. That's news.
Yeah, you don't get a quiet news day with Trump very often, do you? I mean, this is that row that's been rumbling on. Will he, won't he sue the BBC? Well, last night he doubles down on Air Force One, saying he might up the money he's demanding from $1 to $5 billion, which is, I mean, presumably that would be enough to basically bankrupt the BBC. So it's really huge challenge for the broadcaster, the corporation, who, have said, look, mate, we're sorry, we did get it wrong in the editing, but they've denied they defamed him and have refused to stump up money. So I think we probably will see this escalate over the coming months.
Did it feel to you, based upon your judgment, that it was a non-apology, that it was mealy-mouthed, that it was a case of sorry, not sorry?
Sorry, not sorry. It struck me as the kind of apology you get when you have lots of managers and lots of lawyers in a room, desperate not to kind of admit fault that could pave the way for a big court settlement. So yes, it probably was a bit mealy-mouthed, definitely thrashed out. I mean, it took a while, right? It took several days to even get this out there, which is probably a mistake. They probably should have apologised much bigger, much sooner. But it's clear they don't want to admit fault that could lead them to having to sign a big cheque. But they might have to anyway.
Yes, I've got to say that the majority of my viewers and listeners today back this action, and for them it's not about the money, but they just want somebody, a powerful figure, to call out what they perceive to be institutional bias within the BBC. The reason why this is significant is that we have to pay for it if we want to own a TV.
Yeah, I mean, so there's two things. The licence fee model, will that stay forever? I mean, probably not long term, but currently we have to cough up, I think it's like 175 quid a year.
And it's 180 from April, I believe.
Right, and I mean, everyone with a TV has to do that. It's a chunk of money, and also, I mean, lucky them, they get this guaranteed income. So there's going to be questions about should the licence fee continue, the charter renewal is up. But also, I think once this splicing together of footage had come to the fore at Panorama, the BBC would have done a much better job to just have held their hands up much quicker and be much more fulsome in the fact that their own programme was unfair and breached their own editorial guidelines. So while Tim Davie and Deborah Turnus, these two big BBC bosses, both walked over the row. We never really saw the big mea culpa that you would have thought would accompany it. Felt like each stage they were sort of forced to admit what they could. So really, I think that's what a lot of the country and what probably Donald Trump is waiting for.
Most definitely. Well, Derek is in Manchester. He's called Talk Breakfast. Good morning, Derek.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm very well. How are things up in the northwest?
Oh, wet and windy.
Wet and windy, yeah. Well, I can barely see through this pea super in the capital. Derek, Donald, the orange one, is going to sue the BBC. He's looking for up to $5 billion. What's your reaction?
Absolutely brilliant. Hope he gets it. Hope he bankrupts the BBC, because for as long as I can remember, the BBC has done and said everything possible to destroy this country. They've been advocates of multiculturalism, which obviously never worked, but they've brainwashed people, and that's the problem with the BBC, and it needs to be destroyed. End of story. You're not going to bring that back from... you've too many college graduates and university degrees in there, all brainwash themselves and trying to push that onto the wider population.
Derek, stay with us. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, what Derek said there, Kate? The Sun and the Sun on Sunday newspapers are very, very successful newspaper brands, media brands, because of the umbilical relationship that you have with your readers. And I just wonder, you know, Derek's point that this disconnect between the kind of people that make shows for the BBC and the British public who are forced to pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, we've had this criticism of the BBC for some time now, and I think it's fair. I was talking to someone in the week, earlier in the week, and they were talking about it being a kind of disconnect between the metropolitan kind of elite that commission the shows, make the shows, and those out in the country. It is true there is a bit of a crisis of confidence in the BBC, and it's not seen as reflective of the whole of Great Britain. And for as long as it has its current funding model, which isn't a tax but effectively is a tax on people with tellies, then you know you will have this criticism, because they have to reflect not just the people in London, in Manchester, but the whole country.
They've got to keep everyone happy.
Yeah.
Which is why a few years ago I was saying, look, give Farage a show and give Jeremy Corbyn a show. And then actually everyone's happy. But that's the perception, is you don't have that, do you, Derek? And by the way, Derek, I wanted to ask you, I don't think it's just news and current affairs, is it? I mean, I'm thinking woke Doctor Who storylines. Go on.
It's right through the board. I mean, I don't watch the BBC, but from what I remember of it, it's every programme that that's probably why I stopped watching it. Every programme, you've got to push in some sort of agenda on you. But, you know, something else that really should happen is, and I've been saying this for years, people like the people that cause this in the BBC, i.e. the managers that have just left, they should be held personally accountable for what they've done. Why should the taxpayer pay this money out? They should be sued to the hilt for it. I know they haven't got it, but at the end of the day, it should come out of their whatever property they have amassed, whatever pensions they've amassed, because they're the ones that caused it. Just the same as MPs should be held accountable for what they've done to this country, because they have caused it. Just the same as anyone else is held accountable for their actions and made liable for it. So should people in public life be. You know, at the end of the day, I think there's a programme coming out at the moment called Nuremberg. Now, I think we're well overdue our own Nuremberg trials and put a load of politicians for the last 30 years on trial for what they've done to this country.
Derek, an outstanding contribution to the show. Please call me again soon. Derek in Manchester there, really not happy about what he sees as across the board biased coverage within BBC output. I mean, look at the comedies. Look at Have I Got News for You, where if you dare to be a Tory on that show, you get viciously attacked. Simon is in Derby. Good morning, Simon.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm good. Lovely to have you on the show. What are your thoughts on this? Donald Trump, some people are worrying that it will bankrupt the BBC and that we'll lose a great national asset. What do you think?
Well, the first question I was going to present to you was, does the BBC have public liability insurance? I would have thought they would.
It's a really, really good point, and you would think they would. I mean, I suspect that there would be insurance policies. There's also deep pockets, Simon. I mean, this talk of bankruptcy, I think, is a little overcooked, given that the annual income of the BBC, including not just the licence fee, but commercial investments, is around £5.5 billion anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we get a chance. I suppose we do get a chance to see the books and see what comes in.
Yeah.
And then they could just take the payment out rather than doing it straight away. Just pay it on the drip, I suppose, and just say, okay, look, guilty as charged. I mean, I think the burning question for me, which I mentioned to your researcher, was there's one person probably was technically involved with splicing and dicing that tape or that video. Now, the first person that needs to be on the books is him or she who did that job, and also the manager or who asked them to do it, who passed it off. So yes, ultimately the BBC are responsible. They passed it through on the nod. They gave the nod for the broadcast to go ahead, but somebody physically did that, and I want to know who it was. They need naming and shaming because they knew what they're doing was incorrect.
Well, it's
I'm not.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't really. I'm not a big fan of Donald. I think he's pretty good on some things, but it's just the principle of it. Because if you don't get the person that's done it, they're going to do it again.
Simon, what a brilliant call as well. That might be the first time we've spoken. Do call me again in the near future. What do you think about that, Kate? It's interesting that you look at the individuals involved.
Yeah, I think that's true. Look, I mean, there was an editor of that Panorama show, and you have to be accountable for your own decisions. The big problem with the splicing together of that Donald Trump speech is people they can actually have different views on the BBC, but everyone admits that breached its own editorial guidelines. So you can be a fan of the BBC, you can be the biggest critic of the BBC, but everyone admits that should not have gone out like that show. And that's what's really got them into trouble.
And this is the pressure that you have every Saturday evening when you put The Sun on Sunday to bed, is you've got to make sure that you've done your job, because if you've misrepresented the Leader of the Opposition or the Prime Minister, you'll be in hot water.
Yeah, I mean, I would never, ever splice together a quote in written form the way it was portrayed there in visual form. You know, that it totally changed the meaning. I would be held liable for that mistake or that big error of judgment, and I think I've been quite a lot of hot water downstairs. So you just learn very early on in your professional career that you've got to be fair to both sides, and particularly when you're examining someone as big and attention-grabbing and powerful as Donald Trump, you've got to make sure you're fair and impartial.
Definitely, and if you are, everyone's got political opinions, even if they're a journalist, but what you can do is you can hope that your view prevails via the facts. And that's something, you know, when I do the Dolan's dispatch, you know, the people will agree with me, they'll disagree with me. But what hopefully they'll never be able to do is say, well, that statement was untrue.
Yeah, and there has always been this division in journalism between factual reportage, and comment. And you'll just have to be very clear about what's what.
You raise a great point, and The Sun is great with that, because you've got, you know, page 2 of The Sun, which is basically information about the news, and then you've got your leader column and your celebrity columnists who say what they actually think, which obviously is the main thrust of talk. Dell's got a few opinions too. He's in Romford. Hello, Dell. Oh, let me give you a fader. Del, sorry about that. Del, listen, welcome to Talk Breakfast at 9:16. What do you make of this? Donald Trump to sue the BBC and he wants $5 billion.
It's not just Donald Trump, Mark. Donald Trump has every right to sue. What they did was nasty. But there's others that should sue. May I explain? As a Jew, a proud Jew and a proud Brit, I can promise you, the BBC, in my view, are complicit, with others perhaps, but the main ones complicit in the torture that Jews are going through. Jews have been murdered. And all this false news has contributed to a hatred of Jews. Not by all. I get a lot of people who are very nice to me. But I'm wearing my star at the moment, but I am conscious. And I know that people were murdered outside synagogues and in Washington, and that would be linked to anti-Israeli propaganda. And BBC are certainly guilty of anti-Israeli propaganda.
Derek, stay with me. That is not wide of the mark, Kate Ferguson, because we have the leaked memo from Michael Prescott, who's become quite the celebrity this week, who in his notes said that British history was being rewritten through a woke lens. The concerns of 30 professors from Oxford, Cambridge and elsewhere were ignored, their concerns about the BBC, the pro-trans bias with gender-critical feminists being silenced, and the Gaza aspects of the BBC Arabic service, which appears to have, to some degree been a mouthpiece for Hamas propaganda. That was certainly the accusation by Michael Prescott. Del, this is the real-world consequences if you're not balanced, is that British Jews feel not only maybe just deserted by the BBC, but thrown under the bus.
Yeah, and we have seen a massive rise and a very worrying rise in this country of anti-Semitism. You saw that horrific attack at the Manchester synagogue. That was just days before the Tory party conference earlier this year. So that was back in, I think it would have been the end of September, early October. Yeah. And it's just so sad and worrying when you hear British Jews in this country talk about how they feel unsafe, how they haven't felt like this before in their lifetimes, and how they're getting this wave of abuse and physical attacks and intimidation that we just should not stand for.
With the BBC reporting the bombing of a hospital early in the Gaza conflict, which actually affected the strategic direction of that war, and the BBC immediately announced, without all the information, that it was an Israeli strike. It turned out it was not. It was a Hamas
internal
missile, exactly. So this is real world consequences. This is not just a trifling matter.
Yes, and I think, look, the BBC is nothing if it's not its reputation, and it built up a reputation worldwide for impartial and rigorous reporting. And look at the role it played in the Second World War with those famous broadcasts by Churchill and the hope they gave to the resistance in places like France. But today it needs to interrogate itself, really lift its standards, and again be that kind of rigorous reporting institution, which is what it made its name on.
Well, defund the thing, says Eric, and Vincent with a bit of much needed humour, because I've got to say your messages aren't just wise and well put together, they're often delightfully funny. And Vincent says, hi Mark, Trump should crack on and sue the BBC and use the money to finance the BBC ballroom at the White House. Which is a great idea.
I forgot about the ballroom, yeah.
It's on its way. This is not a drill. When's the Sun ballroom coming?
Oh, if only. I don't think anyone's ever taken me to a ballroom. I was thinking recently I would quite like to go to Blackpool.
Yeah, that's...
I think it might be Blackpool Week in Strictly this week.
Blackpool is gorgeous, and I was there recently and I had a great time. Listen, I had a great time in your company, Kate. Can't wait for tomorrow's paper. It's going to be a big one. So much to go at.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're going to get back into the Labour civil war that's been tearing the government apart, all that post kind of budget U-turn madness, and more on immigration and the crackdown to come. Yeah, that's it from Shabana Mahmood, who you're on record as saying is an impressive politician, a view shared by your former stablemate at the Sun, Trevor Kavanagh. Thank you, Kate. Have a great day. Good luck putting the paper to bed tonight. And Kate Ferguson is the political editor of The Sun on Sunday. Do you support Trump's legal action against the BBC? Should he take them to the cleaners? More on this next.
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out.
Don't need to increase taxes.
I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes.
I will not increase your national insurance. I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax.
We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean. The economic circumstances have declined, deteriorated since a year ago. We are having to look at taxes and spending.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:24 Talk Breakfast. Good morning, Mark. I'm sorry, but the BBC and AP, the Associated Press, have always been political and a governmental mouthpiece from World War II through to the end of the Cold War. The issue is that they've allowed a load of lunatic virtue signalling children to be in charge of the propaganda instead of the state. The BBC did not report on Windscale in the 50s, nearly as bad as Chernobyl, but no panic. Betty, thank you for that. And Sarah in Skipton, the BBC is so biased, they pumped lies daily through their news stations. I blame them for much of the anti-Israel sentiment and anti-Semitism. It's not just Trump, it is so much more. Defund the BBC, says, is it Sarah or Sarah? Thank you for that, Sarah. Mark, I support Trump, says Don in Wallington. The BBC have crossed over from left-wing bias to left-wing activism. Defund the BBC. And last but not least, Jill says, good morning, Mark. The question of the BBC and whether it's biased bears out with a friend of mine who applied to go on Question Time. He was asked several questions and what his political allegiance was. He thought he would say Labour, even though he was a Conservative, just to be accepted onto the programme. When he took part, it was very obvious that at least 85% of the audience were Labour, which was confirmed in the way that they acted when any anti-Labour guest tried to speak with jeering. Jill in West Sussex, thank you for that. And finally, Mick in Wallington. Mark, the BBC are using the same editing and propaganda techniques as totalitarian rogue states. Melanie is in Watford in Hertfordshire. Hi, Melanie. Welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Morning, Mark. I would like to wish Donald Trump every success in suing the BBC, the awful woke BBC. And it's hopefully, well, this is a long time coming. But what I'd really like to say to Donald Trump, if I could write a letter to him or get someone like Nigel to write a letter or speak to him, is this is taxpayers' money, and $5 billion of taxpayers' money would go a hell of a long way in funding a new hospital or hospital staff or machinery, tools, MRIs, scanners, everything, or even a new school, teachers. And I wouldn't want the money to go through the government because they will just, well, it would just go elsewhere. But I would like it to be privately given. And I've coined a phrase, he would be seen as magnanimous.
Oh, my goodness. That is brilliant. Magnanimous. I've not heard that one. That is golden, Melanie. I think we should send that to the White House because Trump would be all over that like a rash. Why is this suing of the BBC by the Trump an important moment, do you think, Melanie? Why has it got us talking? What are the implications?
It's holding them finally to account. We want to see the people who've allowed this to happen. It is a mealy-mouthed apology they gave. It wasn't holding their hands up saying, yeah, people did this for a specific reason. It wasn't a mistake or an error of judgment. This is just legal speak. It's rubbish.
And Melanie, what do you think? What do you think of well-paid BBC stars on the payroll, like Nick Robinson of the Today programme and John Simpson, circling the wagons to defend the organisation, calling this a right-wing witch hunt?
It's ridiculous. They don't have a leg to stand on. The BBC's been caught bang to rights. Twice now, the Newsnight one was slightly more poorly edited, but the Panorama one was seamless. But it's the same cut, and they were called out live on Newsnight at the time. No one reacted. This is long overdue, and these guys are just trying to defend their positions or make themselves relevant, but they're not. They're so woke and they're so wrong, and it's just easy to prove.
It feels like the BBC have lost the dressing room. Can they win you back? Can the corporation be changed so that you'll start watching it again and believing it, Melanie?
A total clean out from top to bottom.
Right. Yeah, we can but hope. Melanie, keep dropping the truth bombs. I'd love another call from you soon if you can. Melanie in Watford there, who I think raised some really important points about Trump's legal action. And aren't we lucky that a foreign leader is actually trying to help us to wake up to the problems on our own shores? Gareth is in Derbyshire. Hi, Gareth.
Good morning, Mark. Nice to speak to you.
You too.
Yeah, this Trump and BBC issue. The thing is, obviously, they've obviously done something wrong because they've admitted it. But their defence is that it was a mistake. Their legal basically said, oh, yes, we did do it, Gov, but it was just a simple mistake.
Yes.
But is that a very good defence? Because obviously they've actually taken some action. They've got a procedure to do. I mean, I'm not a technical person about videos and TV, but they've spliced some coverage together. That's not really a mistake, is it? It's the way they work.
It's not a mistake. It's not an oversight. It's not an error. It's an attempt, isn't it, Gareth, to peddle a lie about what happened that day?
So if it did come to a legal case, which is likely it won't, because they'll probably have to make some sort of agreement out of court with it. But they're not going to be in a very strong position, are they? Because they've obviously admitted this is how they work, and to just come out and say, oh, yes, it was wrong. So, I mean, it's not going to prove anything, really.
Absolutely nothing, no.
But, it's the BBC, it's past its sell-by date, really. We don't need it. I mean, people call it a public service broadcast. We haven't needed that for about 30 years. You get broadcasting from all sorts of areas. I mean, anything that's currently done by the BBC, if it wasn't there, if it was in demand, it would be done by somebody on a private basis. Whether it's news, local radio, anything. So, we're paying £170 a month, people who still pay it, for something that really we should be choosing to pay.
Gareth, I think you speak for millions, I've got to say. I really do. And I wonder your point there about, has it passed its sell-by date is a really significant one. Gareth, let's speak again soon. Gareth in Derbyshire there, who is really asking big questions about the future of this organisation, not just the licence fee, but its very existence. Got a couple of voice notes. Paul has messaged the show. Take a listen.
Good morning, Mark. I cannot believe commentators like Andy Williams call President Trump a bully. We've had virtually every member of the cabinet insult the president at various levels. We've also had the Labour Party send over a couple of hundred people to canvass and try and get people to vote for the Democrats. We've had the BBC not just lie, but tell us misleading stuff, which is so wrong. They're supposed to report the news and be objective. If you keep poking a bear with a stick, eventually it's going to get annoyed. And I think the BBC deserves everything that they're going to face up to now. They are no longer a trusted broadcaster. There's so many areas in which they've misled the public. And the sooner they're gone, the better.
Wow.
Good morning, great show.
Oh, well, thank you for that, Paul. Very kind words, and what a brilliant voice note that was. Interesting line from Leslie. Mark, if Trump sues and wins, the BBC licence fee will have to increase to over £200. And a lovely line from Tanya in the capital. Good morning, Mark. The BBC bias is so bright it can be seen from space. Listen, here is Gareth in Derbyshire with a voice note as well. Oh no, I've gone mad. Sorry, it's Darren. Darren, voice note, top man. Go for it.
Morning, Mark. Darren from Suffolk. Great show as ever. Your guest this morning just sums up the left for me. Everything that's wrong with the left. They just cannot own a situation. They have to make excuses all the time, whether it's Alistair Campbell through to your guest this morning. So instead of saying, look, we made mistakes, we've identified the team, we're trying to change the narrative, create news instead of reporting the news, what we've done is wrong and we're going to move forward and make it better. Get the people back behind us. Even the people leaving the BBC outside the building, no, there's no bias there. When we've all seen the bias, whether it's Ukraine coverage, whether it's Gaza coverage, whether it's the Trump issues, it's all there. There's a lot of propaganda comes out the BBC and they need to change, whether it's climate, the weather maps turning red, everything. But they just won't own it. Even when they leave the BBC outside, there's no bias. We know there is. Own it, move forward.
Love your voice notes, love your texts, love your calls. Keep them coming. Could Trump bring down the BBC? That's next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:36, it's Talk Breakfast. Lovely to have your company. Don't forget, I'm back tomorrow from 6 till 10. It's been amazing to be on air with you today. We've had such a big conversation about Donald Trump suing the BBC for $5 billion. And it's going to be a major talking point for the foreseeable future. And let's get a reaction now from a very good friend of mine, the Queen of US royal, showbiz and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Now, Kinsey, great to see you in the studio face to face. We love having you here in the UK. Donald Trump, your president, is suing our national state broadcaster. This is a huge story, but he's had great success doing this in the United States with, I think, ABC and CBS.
That's right.
So is it ABC makes 60 Minutes?
No, CBS makes 60 Minutes,
Right.
but like I'm sure you're aware of this, but if your audience isn't, ABC and CBS, it's ABC, CBS, and NBC. Those are like the three major broadcast. If you have an antenna, anyone can watch that at home. These are some of the most trusted sources in news. It's not cable news where it's opinion. It's supposed to be fact-based. So Trump went after them because he said, you know, you're supposed to be fact-based. We're supposed to be able to trust you. And in certain cases with George Stephanopoulos and ABC, he was saying you lied about me. Now with CBS, he didn't like the editing on a Kamala Harris video.
Which was very misleading editing.
It was, absolutely. And, you know, so he sued them for that. And if I were the BBC, I would be sincerely worried about this because the editing of that video, and I'm just saying this, I'm not saying I'm a fan of anybody, but I think that the editing of that video is, it's very misleading. It's very misleading to the point of historical inaccuracy.
Well, that's right. The BBC have previous on this in royal circles with the Panorama interview. Diana, who I know is a total hero of yours, was duped into doing that interview, which proved so damaging for her personally, based upon falsified materials from Martin Bashir, a BBC journalist. So, you know, it's very damaging. Well, listen, let's get on to your area of expertise, which is royal commentary. And an interesting revelation about King Charles and the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle.
Okay, can I just say that this story is so appropriate right now because it's Tom Bauer taking us back to when the King and Meghan spent some time together in Scotland. And in Harry's book, Harry talks about how they bonded, you know, Meghan Markle and the King, and just how close they truly were. But Tom Bauer tells us that really behind the scenes, the King was incredibly frustrated over the fact that Meghan wouldn't stop her father from going on television. And the King kept berating, as Tom Bauer says, Harry, saying, get her to get on a plane and go to Mexico and figure this out and hash this out with her father, because the longer that this continues, the more toxic this conversation is becoming. At the time, Thomas Markle, he does not do this anymore, but at the time he was going on TV pretty regularly and not just criticizing Meghan, but also criticizing the British royal family. And why I think this is so timely is because December 3rd, Meghan Markle's family Christmas special on Netflix, where she's going to be creating new traditions.
Be afraid, be very afraid.
Exactly. And, you know, how can you have any sort of traditions whatsoever, try to teach us about traditions when family is not something that you seem to prioritize in the real world?
Well, she'll probably say in that show that Christmas is about family and friends coming together.
Yes.
This is Prince Harry, who, according to the royal butler, told me in this show, Harry doesn't speak to his friends anymore, okay, his old buddies. And Meghan has dumped most of her family, including her half-siblings and her father, Thomas, who paid for her education and raised her like a princess from day one.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the contradiction is quite jarring. But I also find it frustrating because she specifically in Washington, D.C. a few weeks ago told the Fortune Most Powerful Women Summit that this was going to be released, her holiday special, in November, and pushing it to December 3rd I felt was intentional because Catherine, Princess of Wales, has an event on her annual Christmas event on December 5th.
The Christmas Carol service.
Her Christmas Carol service. So she knew
the same
that
week, she's moved it to the same week as Catherine. I mean, this is a scorched earth policy. Meghan Markle detests Princess Catherine, doesn't she?
I believe so. It's my personal opinion that she's incredibly jealous, and that's what all of this boils down to. And there is a new report, and I believe it's the Times today, and I had heard this over the week, that Harry and Meghan were dishonest about Harry's trip to Canada. Now, what we're talking about right now is clashing schedules. It looks like Harry and Meghan intentionally distract from the good work, the real work that the British royal family is doing by scheduling events around their events and announcements. Now, Harry was accused of doing this because the second William landed in Rio for Earthshot, Harry announced that he was heading to Canada to sit down and work with veterans. And Harry's team replied to the press pack, that's not true. We gave the palace the courtesy of letting them know this was coming. Well, it's been revealed today, although we were whispering about it all throughout the week, that the palace has said absolutely not. We did not know that Harry was going to a Commonwealth country where the king remains sovereign and basically representing, you know half in, half out, the royal
another fake state visit,
exactly.
Another fake royal visit,
exactly,
the cosplay prince,
and they're saying that the Sussexes were dishonest here and that they did not give the palace the courtesy heads up that Harry was going there, or at least ask their permission. This is
so Harry did not give the Buckingham Palace the heads up that he was off to Canada.
Yes.
To honour veterans.
Yes, and the reason why I feel we are always going to appreciate Harry acknowledging veterans, but it is the King's country, and he can honor veterans anywhere.
Most definitely.
And it does feel, he went specifically to a venue that Princess Anne, Queen Elizabeth, and the Queen Mother had been to, and he says that in a CTV interview. It looks like he's just hanging on by his claws, that proximity to the British royal family. And so I feel like that's what we're seeing right now. And the Queen said during the Sandringham Summit, absolutely no half in, half out. You can go off and try to do this stuff on your own. And it was a temporary, remember at the beginning they said it was only temporary and that maybe everybody would come together in the end. But Harry and Meghan went scorched earth. The palace said absolutely not. We're going to completely cut you off now. Thanks to Oprah, thanks to Spare, thanks to the Harry and Meghan Netflix series, because they were signing all of these contracts throughout the process of that temporary, you know, estrangement. And now I really feel like you're seeing the Duke and Duchess of Sussex do everything in their power to distract from the hard-working British royals. Kardashian parties while we're having remembrance ceremonies.
Wild.
It's
Wild.
unreal.
And dictating to the Kardashians about whether or not they can be photographed within the party, even though there were people at that party much more famous and accomplished than Harry and Meghan, such as Bill Gates, who invented the internet, Mark Zuckerberg, who invented Facebook, and the small matter of Jeff Bezos, one of the richest men in the world, who invented Amazon.
Yeah.
But no, it's Harry and Meghan calling the shots.
And Jay-Z and Beyonce, who entered through a secret entrance and had literally no pictures of themselves taken. If you don't want pictures of yourself,
there's a way to do it.
You don't walk through the pap shots, and then you don't pose. Meghan is literally posing, you know, ear to ear, smiling ear to ear in a ton of those photos. If you don't want your picture taken, you don't. But that, again, to the point that the Times makes, we're seeing a pattern of lying. Did they, because the Kardashians are saying that they are lying about not signing a slip to, you know, for permission to use their image. And now the Times is saying they're lying about giving the palace a heads up.
And even if you don't want to be photographed as a public celebrity, then don't go to a party at Jeff Bezos' $165 million mansion in the company of Adele and Bill Gates, because someone will probably snap you. It's wild.
And the Kardashians.
And the Kardashians, who are, they know. I mean, Kim in particular is not afraid of a smartphone, is she?
No.
And especially with the zoom lens that some of those devices have got. Kinsey, before you go, can I ask you, it didn't take Charles and Camilla long to see through Meghan all those years ago.
No, I mean, what I thought was so interesting about this Tom Bauer piece was that Tom says that the king could not understand what Meghan wanted, what her ultimate objective was. And that's when he realized that he might, the institution might not be able to trust her. But I think Camilla had her number from the get. Camilla is in the
it's
Queen.
It's a woman's intuition, isn't it?
The Queen is incredibly intelligent, and I think she realized that Meghan had, you know, some magical powers over Harry that might be of concern.
Did Charles and Camilla see Meghan as a fake?
I believe so, and an opportunist, I think, is the real word.
Crumbs. This is damning stuff, isn't it?
Oh, and Tom Bauer has a new book coming out, so
well,
get
this is so exciting,
that,
and he's going to feature on your Unfiltered channel, no doubt.
Absolutely.
Do you know when that book's coming out?
In March, I believe, 2026.
And it's going to make uncomfortable reading. It's been yet another horrible week for the Sussexes, hasn't it? With
it really has.
Not just the Kardashians' party, which is tone deaf as William and Catherine remembered the war dead, but the absence of a poppy on Meghan Markle's lapel, which we've got this ridiculous idea that in the United States, the home of commerce, you can't purchase something quickly.
You're at Jeff Bezos' house. I ordered one from Amazon.
You could actually ask Jeff.
Yeah.
Can you get me a poppy, Jeff?
I ordered one from Amazon and I had it in less than 24 hours, Meghan Markle. And you're at Jeff Bezos' house.
Is there a chance that this will be a problem briefly for Invictus? Because Harry's the face of Invictus, which is about wounded veterans competing in sport. Meghan is part of that because she's his wife, and she turns up, doesn't she, sometimes? Well, she normally goes to Invictus for the first couple of days. Is she going to get booed by the crowd because she snubbed them on Remembrance Sunday?
I don't think she's coming. I don't think she has any intention of coming.
Wow.
I have something to tell you that I haven't said yet. It is my understanding that they are desperately trying to get William and Catherine and the King to show any sort of attention to Meghan because they want everyone at Invictus. So Meghan's not going to show up unless she feels some sort of kindness or sympathy from William, Catherine, and the King. She wants some sort of interaction. They have frozen her out. She is basically dead to them. And she does not want to come to, it is my understanding, does not want to come to Invictus unless they show her some sort of kindness. And the objective of the Invictus team is to show the entire family there that unity. Good luck. Good luck.
On that royal bombshell, always with the big exclusives, Kinsey Schofield, love your work, and go to YouTube and subscribe to Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered, unmissable and entertaining royal coverage. Next up, we're going to go down memory lane and a classic year that we'll never forget.
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out.
Don't need to increase taxes.
I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes.
I will not increase your national insurance. I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax.
We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean. The economic circumstances have declined, deteriorated since a year ago. We are having to look at taxes and spending.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Listen, folks, it's been such a busy conversation today. Trump and his war against the BBC. More on that tomorrow. Talk Breakfast. I'm back from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Do join me with your calls, your comments, your voice notes. It really is such a treat. I'm loving being back on the Home of Common Sense. Thank you for having me. Talk is the most important place, because it's all about getting your views out there, and we'll do the same tomorrow from 6. I look forward to it, plus Dolan's Dispatch and my top guests as well. But speaking of top guests, in the studio we have Virgin Radio star Steve Denyer. Hello, Steve.
Hello, very good morning to you. So what were we doing in life in 2010? You know, every year we focus on a different year. This was a year massive in politics. We had our very, very first, for many, many years, hung Parliament. Do you remember? So David Cameron made this announcement. Let's take a look at this.
We're just going to put 10p in the meter.
Her Majesty the Queen has asked me to form a new government, and I have accepted. Compared with a decade ago, this country is more open at home and more compassionate abroad, and that is something we should all be grateful for. In terms of the future, our country has a hung parliament where no party has an overall majority, and we have some deep and pressing problems. I aim to form a proper and full coalition between the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats.
Well, that was a result, wasn't it? Because everyone thought the Tories would lose.
Yes.
And I think what happened is that Gordon Brown locked himself in number 10 and wouldn't leave because he was convinced that he could somehow cobble together.
Yeah, and it took days and days and days for that. There's a very famous kind of Adam Bolton meltdown on Sky News because he'd been on air for so many hours over the days covering this. No one knew what would happen. In the end, it was David Cameron, it was Nick Clegg. It was the first coalition since World War II, I think, wasn't it?
Yes, that's exactly
right. So amazing stuff. And it kind of worked for a while, didn't it?
I would never drag you into politics because I know as the star of Virgin Radio you're deliciously neutral, but in my humble opinion it was an underrated regime. It was certainly less divided, even though it's two parties, Lib Dems and Tory, less divided than the previous Labour government.
It was weird.
It tells you a lot about politics. And what they did, they got the deficit down because they inherited a massive financial headache after 2008. So yeah, I don't think it was too bad. What it did do though, temporarily, is destroy the Lib Dems.
Yes.
So that was the point. Nick Clegg became very unelectable, but you know what? On his CV now, Deputy Prime Minister, not too bad.
Not too bad for back in the day, career move, isn't it?
And he went off and made millions with Facebook, didn't
he? Indeed.
Nice work if you can get it.
Big Meta ambassador, huge.
Yeah.
So Tony Blair released his memoir in this year. That was going on in...
Was that a work of fiction?
It was called A Journey, and it was the biggest selling kind of political book ever when it came out. What we learned from it, he hated Gordon Brown. He said that he was very difficult emotionally. He spoke about, obviously, the Iraq War. That was the big controversy. The money from the book went to the Royal British Legion, so he donated all the profits.
That's actually quite generous.
It's quite a good thing to do. Want to have some obviously, Kinsey was here a moment ago. William and Kate got engaged.
Huge deal.
That
was an interesting romance because it was a little on or off, wasn't it? They dated for a while at St Andrews, and then there was a split.
Yes.
And I think it's because maybe William wasn't ready to settle, as these young men, you know what they're like.
Yeah.
And then, bang, the reunion, and then they tied.
So he proposed in Kenya with Princess Diana's sapphire engagement ring, and remember, it was a year before they got married. That was a massive wedding, wasn't it? You had like Pippa's dress. Harry was the best man. How times have changed.
Pippa, the dress, and then her figure was definitely a talking point. She's a very stunning young woman, isn't she, Pippa? Yeah. She almost stole the limelight.
Absolutely.
Not intentionally.
I think there were more headlines about her.
I think just to call a spade, there were some references to her bum, I think, that apparently was very flattering in the dress.
Do you want the most kind of...
Can I just say I've got a much better bum than Pippa Middleton?
Well, I was just about to say that.
Yeah, and thank God this is YouTube, because my viewers get to see.
Absolutely. That's the extra time.
On a daily basis.
Extra part.
Yeah, we do that.
The show.
Dolan Extra.
Raoul
That's on Babe Station.
I'm going to chuck at you.
Now Raoul Moat has a dark...
What do you remember about this?
Well, this is a man... Well, was he a murderer or something?
So he came out of prison. He'd been in prison. And he went on this violent spree to take down anybody involved in his relationship, and it was very murky and stuff. And then pretty much disappeared for a week. He went undercover, and people didn't know where he was. You had like 300 police units looking for him. You had Kay Burley, do you remember this guy who's live in the woods trying to figure out, where he would be, what he would be doing. And then it all kind of climaxed a week later when he shot himself. But Gaza, do you remember Paul Gascoigne turned up saying that he knew Moti, and he turned up with a fishing rod and a 4-pack of, what was it?
A 4-pack of Coronabugs, and I think a cooked chicken.
A cooked chicken.
Fried chicken, right? Because that would win hearts and minds. I think Gaza has said he regrets that moment.
Yes.
And he was like, "Where's Moti? I know him well." And I think that was when Gaza was going through mental challenges as well.
Yeah,
what about culturally, music, films, anything like that?
I'm going to say to Toy Story 3, it was literally the first animated movie to make over $1 billion.
And it's a great movie.
It's a great movie. They took 11 years to make that. The incinerator scene is often pitched as one of the most emotionally kind of dark scenes for an animated movie. Almost didn't make it in it, but it is one of those movies, I think, that kind of changed everything, and it raised the bar for other animated movies. We lost a legend. I just want to mention this, Norman Wisdom. So many people will just smile when Norman Wisdom's name is mentioned.
Jeez.
Charlie Chaplin loved him. He made over 30 movies. He retired at 90. His very final public appearance was on Last of the Summer Wine. But we did, they don't make them like Norman Wisdom.
Those comedies were brilliant. Mr. Grimsdale was his catchphrase.
Yes, exactly.
He was a genius. I'm so glad you're remembering Norman Wisdom.
And he did all of those stunts, which could have hurt the average person. He did it all himself, and it was his act. And even when he got knighted by the Queen in year 2000, he had a laugh with her.
Yeah.
He broke royal protocol, and one of a kind.
Now, this might have been our best ever retro rewind. Please come back in a week's time if you can, if your schedule allows. Look forward. Steve Denyer, catch Steve on the pre-breakfast show just before Chris Evans.